quick source, but it is very short lasting बच्चे. That means it will only last for few seconds basically बेटा. ठीक है, तो मोस्ट रैपिड सोर्स इज श्योरली फॉस्फोक्रिएटिन बेटा, बट इट इज शॉर्ट लास्टिंग, दैट हैज टू बी रिमेंबर्ड. क्लियर है बात. तो फॉर एग्जाम्पल बेटा, जब सडन फॉर एग्जाम्पल स्प्रिंट करना होता है, अचानक से 100 मीटर दौड़ना है या वेट लिफ्टिंग करना है, तब जाके डेफिनेटली बेटा फॉस्फोक्रिएटिन इज गोइंग टू बी यूजफुल डेफिनेटली. अनाएरोबिक ग्लाइकोलाइसिस, यस, इट विल बी अ सेकंड बेस्ट आंसर बेटा. तो याद रखना, आफ्टर फॉस्फोक्रिएटिन इफ दे आस्क यू दैट सेकंड मोस्ट रैपिड सोर्स क्या होता है, तो आंसर हैज टू बी अनाएरोबिक ग्लाइकोलाइसिस, which usually happens in the absence of oxygen, and the end product that is formed is going to be lactic acid. तो इसीलिए एक्सरसाइज जब बहुत टाइम तक करते हो, and if the body starts having anaerobic glycolysis, patient may develop lactic acidosis, and due to that patient can develop muscle cramps beta. Clear? So that is what is important to be remembered. ठीक है, glycogenolysis is the process that occurs during the fasting state beta. ठीक है, and lastly TCA cycle is always going to happen inside the body beta. It is not only going to happen when the muscles start exercising, it is always going to occur 24/7. It is a vital cycle of your cell. That is what is important to be remembered. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. तो ये याद रखना, मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट मोस्ट रैपिड सोर्स विल बी फॉस्फोक्रिएटिन फॉलोड बाय anaerobic glycolysis. Next question number 15 here, if they ask you beta that hemoglobin basically, okay, hemoglobin acts as a buffer beta in the human body, we know that. ठीक है, which among the following amino acid, which they are asking you, which among the following amino acid is going to protonate and deprotonate basically at a neutral pH, ठीक है, and that will provide a buffering action to the hemoglobin beta at a blood pH of 7.4. So at a neutral pH basically beta, which amino acid is going to protonate and deprotonate, and it will like act as a buffering agent beta. Yes, this was a previous one-liner question, straightforward, that histidine is the amino acid which is known to provide basically beta a buffering action to the blood. That is what is very, very important to be remembered. Clear hai baat? Next important thing to be remembered, histidine is also used for the production of what? Histidine is also used for the production of an inflammatory mediator known as histamine beta. So histamine production happens with the help of histidine itself. याद रखना ये बात. Next important, arginine की अगर मैं बात करूं, arginine is generally used for the production of, we know, arginine is generally used for the production of nitric oxide. Then it is also used in the production of urea beta. So nitric oxide, urea definitely in conditions में beta. Okay, for this nitric oxide and urea का production में arginine has a role. Second important, I hope all of you are quite aware beta that arginine is going to be the most basic amino acid, most alkaline or the most basic amino acid अगर पूछा जाए तो answer has to be arginine itself beta. Clear है बात? That is important. And arginine is which type of amino acid, anybody? Essential, non-essential, semi-essential? So the only semi-essential amino acid beta will be arginine. Yes, histidine is considered in this category, but it is plus minus always beta. The only main like semi-essential amino acid answer has to be arginine beta. These are the points to be remembered about arginine. Next important, if I talk about lysine बच्चे, याद रखना lysine की अगर मैं बात करूं, we know that definitely lysine is going to be present in cereals beta. तो lysine जो होता है definitely you obtain it mainly from the cereals. Next important, if I talk about glycine, glycine is important. Glycine will be responsible for the production of heme. Second, it is also used in the production of collagen. Third, it is also used in the production of an antioxidant called as glutathione beta. And fourth, it is also used in the production of creatine. तो याद रखना definitely beta that heme, collagen, glutathione, and creatine synthesis in all these productions definitely beta we always need glycine amino acid. That is what is important to be remembered beta in the body. Clear है बात? चलो, so these are the important points. If they ask you beta that which is going to be the most glucogenic amino acid, मोस्ट ग्लूकोजेनिक, सबसे ज्यादा ग्लूकोज में कन्वर्ट होने के चांस किस अमाइनो एसिड के होते हैं? द मोस्ट ग्लूकोजेनिक अमाइनो एसिड विल बी, answer will be alanine. The most glucogenic amino acid answer is going to be alanine beta. Second important point if I ask you basically, and that is going to be about, okay, second important point if I talk about beta, and sorry, that is going to be that which is the most essential amino acid, as I've already asked you. Yes, the most essential amino acid, if they ask you beta, answer has to be leucine. The most essential is going to be leucine itself. Okay. Next important, if they ask you that which are going to be the ketogenic amino acid, मैंने बोला हुआ है तुम्हें दैट कीटोन बॉडीज आर फॉर्म जब बॉडी के एल लग जाते हैं ड्यूरिंग स्टार्वेशन स्टेट. तो कीटोजेनिक अमीनो एसिड्स आर गोइंग टू बी ल्यूसीन एंड लाइसिन बेटा. तो ल्यूसीन एंड लाइसिन आर गोइंग टू बी कीटोजेनिक अमीनो एसिड्स. दैट इज व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू बी रिमेंबर्ड. होपफुली क्लियर. So these are the important amino acids and their functions that you need to remember with for the examination. Next question number 16, if I talk about इसके अलावा दो और amino acids के जो orally discuss किए थे, I will tell you, and that is one is going to be tryptophan beta. Tryptophan के function is to produce three things beta. First is going to be niacin. What is niacin? Vitamin B3 beta. Second important is going to be neurotransmitter known as serotonin, which is a mood elevator. And third is going to be a hormone responsible for circadian rhythm of the body known as melatonin beta. Okay? Whereas tyrosine amino acid, if they ask you beta, the tyrosine amino acid is responsible for the production of. So hame beta, it is responsible for the production of a skin pigment known as melanin. Second, it is responsible for the production of catecholamines beta, responsible for sympathetic activity, that is epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. Third, it is also responsible for the production of thyroid hormones like T3 and T4 beta. That is important. Clear? Chalo. Next important, if they ask you question number 16. Few days after birth beta, a neonate becomes lethargic after having breast milk, and the child is going to refuse breastfeeding beta. The child also vomits during forced breastfeeds bache, and there are abdominal cramps basically along with excessive crying. However, mother says beta that the child is accepting glucose and water. What can be the likely diagnosis in this child beta? What do you think? तो वी नो बेटा, यहाँ पे इतना तो क्लियर है दैट द चाइल्ड इज रिफ्यूजिंग द ब्रेस्ट फीडिंग बच्चे, एंड वेन एवर द चाइल्ड इज डेफिनेटली हैविंग ब्रेस्ट फीड्स, द चाइल्ड इज हैविंग वॉमिटिंग बेटा. ठीक है, मतलब द चाइल्ड इज नॉट एबल टू डाइजेस्ट द मिल्क. Now, when the child is not able to digest milk, beta, two options are clearly ruled out. It is not a case of hereditary fructose intolerance and not even the case of von Gerke's disease. It is either a case of lactose intolerance or galactosemia, beta. Now, इसमें अगर बहुत logically जाए, simply, which is more common among both of them? तो हमें पता है that the most common type of malabsorption syndrome worldwide beta is going to be lactose intolerance बच्चे. One point is that. Second, have they mentioned about any kind of cataract basically over here? No. Have they mentioned about any kind of hepatomegaly as such over here? No. So that is another reason beta why galactosemia seems to be more less likely in this condition. Second important point that they have mentioned clearly, and that is the child is accepting glucose and water beta. Now important is we know that in patients who are suffering from lactose intolerance beta, जब milk देते हो तो the child is not able to digest the milk. Why? Because in lactose intolerance the child has a deficiency of an enzyme called as lactase, and we know that lactase enzyme is also called as beta galactosidase. So important is when this lactase or beta galactosidase enzyme is deficient, lactose is not broken down into glucose and galactose beta, and that's the reason the child is not able to digest the milk or the lactose. But जब glucose देते हो plain beta, there is no problem in absorption of that glucose. Okay, clearly. So that is a classical case of option A, that is lactose intolerance basically. That is important to be remembered. Galactosemia is going to be less likely in the patient beta. That has to be kept in mind. Clear है बात? चलो. So if I talk about definitely whether it is a case of lactose intolerance or a galactosemia beta, what should be the treatment in the patient? Bolo. So we know in both the conditions, beta, the treatment is nothing else but avoid breastfeeding. Obviously, okay, you have to avoid breastfeeding. Secondly, beta, you also have to avoid any kind of milk and dairy products, beta. Yes, the milk and dairy products have to be avoided later on in life also, beta. SNI not only during the uh, uh, sorry, infancy beta, you also have to avoid the milk and dairy products in this patient throughout life. The patient definitely can take beta other types of milk like soy milk, almond milk, coconut milk, all of them. No issues with that. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. Chalo. गलत है बेटा, तो आंसर हैज टू बी ऑप्शन ए, दैट इज लैक्टोज इंटॉलरेंस. ठीक है. नाउ इंपॉर्टेंट इज इफ दे आस्क यू डेफिनेटली अबाउट दिस क्वेश्चन ओवर हियर, दैट वॉन गिरकिच डिसीज वी नो बेटा इट इज अ केस ऑफ ग्लाइकोजन storage disorder बच्चे. In this condition the child will have no problem in absorption of milk बच्चे. Here definitely the problem will be in glycogen breakdown, जिसकी वजह से the child will have a fasting hypoglycemia. That will be a problem. Hereditary fructose intolerance में we know there will be deficiency of which enzyme? Fructokinase or idolase B? So please remember, in cases of hereditary fructose intolerance, there is deficiency of aldolase B beta, which is the main enzyme of fructose metabolism. So whenever the patient takes fructose or any kind of fruit sugars beta, the patient will not be able to digest those fruit sugars, and the patient will develop same problems like lethargy, vomiting, all of that. Okay? चलो, so that is what is important to be remembered. तो इस condition में, in case of hereditary fructose intolerance, what should be the treatment? Treatment should be avoid any kind of fructose containing diet beta. ठीक है? तो please remember, in patients definitely who are having hereditary fructose intolerance, the patient has to avoid any kind of a fructose containing diet, usually fruit juices and all. Question number 17 beta, it states we are having a patient of sickle cell anemia बच्चे due to manifestation of homozygous recessive genes basically for an abnormal hemoglobin molecule. ठीक है? The type of mutation responsible beta is usually seen in which chain? It is usually seen in the beta globin gene beta. It is usually seen in the beta globin gene. At which position? Sixth position beta. This will be a likely example of what now? So if I talk about the first one, bache, that see there are three types of point mutation that we are going to have. Point mutation ka matlab, there is only change at one single point beta. Either there is insertion, deletion, okay. Something is going to happen at single point beta in the whole nucleotide sequence. So पहला वाला जो case है इसमें देख सकते हो that initially we had a codon beta called as GAA, which was replaced to GAG. That is one nucleotide was replaced over here. Initially, it was coding for glutamate. Even after mutation, it is still coding for the same amino acid, that is glutamate. So, do you even get to know about the mutation? No. Therefore, it is silent mutation when same amino acid is going to be formed beta. Next important picture. Jahan pe you are able to see, initially the codon was GAA. After mutation, it changed into UAA beta. Initially, the codon was coding for glutamate, but later on when it converted to UAA, we know UAA, UAG and UGA, these three are stop codons beta. So obviously here there was no amino acid or no protein synthesis, and जब कोई amino acid नहीं बनेगा, that will be an example of nonsense mutation beta. Next important is now, here we are able to see beta a codon that is GAA. GAA has got changed into GAC beta. Initially GAA was coding for glutamate, but later on after mutation it is coding for aspartate beta, which is a different amino acid. So after mutation, if there is production of different amino acid, that is known as a missense mutation. Here they are talking about a case of sickle cell anemia where there is a mutation on sixth position on the beta globin gene beta, जहाँ पे the glutamate amino acid usually gets replaced by valine beta, and जिसकी वजह से initially we had to form HbA beta, which is an adult hemoglobin, but इस गलती की वजह से what gets formed as HbS, that is a sickled hemoglobin beta. तो same hemoglobin or different hemoglobin is formed? Different. और जब भी कुछ गलत बन जाता है बेटा या दूसरा ही कुछ बन जाता है, so it is an example of option D, that is missense mutation beta. Same hemoglobin, if it would have been formed beta, then it was a silent mutation. Here there is no insertion, no deletion beta, rather there is a replacement which is seen over here. Okay? So that is what is important. Next question number 18. Here we are having a 15-year-old boy beta who has not taken the meal since how many hours? Since the last 12 hours beta, but still his blood glucose levels are normal beta. Even he has not taken meal since last 12 hours, still his blood glucose levels are normal. Which among the following processes beta will be occurring at a higher rate beta inside his body? I hope all of you are quite aware beta what are the sources of blood glucose basically. तो अगर वो पूछते that what are going to be the sources of blood glucose, कहाँ से मिलता है तुम्हें blood glucose? First of all, it depends on the state beta. First, if I talk about if the patient is in the well-fed state, that is initial 2 to 4 hours after eating the food, from where do you get the glucose? Yes, from the diet itself. जो खाने से ग्लूकोज दिया है वही होगा. तो definitely beta, in the initial 2 to 4 hours after food intake, you get the glucose from the dietary glucose beta. Second important, in the fasting state. What is fasting? 12 to 18 hours without food beta. So please tell me, in the fasting state when your body is there, that it will get the glucose from the stores. What is the store of glucose? Glycogen beta. Now glycogen is stored at two sites, bache, liver and muscle basically. So which glycogenolysis will help you in getting the blood glucose during fasting state? So it is the liver glycogenolysis definitely beta, which helps you to get the blood glucose during the fasting state. Why? We know that muscle glycogen is broken down during the fasting state, but muscle does not contain an enzyme called as glucose 6 phosphatase, and therefore the last process of glucose 6 phosphate to glucose does not happen in the muscle. So muscle glycogen breakdown cannot help in maintaining the blood glucose levels beta. And third, when the body goes into starvation state, when the patient has not eaten food since last 2 to 3 days beta, then in this condition now all the glycogen has also been used up. Now the blood glucose will be maintained by the process of gluconeogenesis, that is making up new glucose beta from the non-carbohydrate compounds, which will occur in which organ? Factory कौन है? Liver. So it will occur in the liver. Now my patient is in which state beta? My patient has not taken meal beta since the last 12 hours. So obviously we know up to 2 days without food beta, usually the patient is considered in the fasting state, and therefore the process responsible for maintaining his blood glucose level will be option D, that is liver glycogenolysis. We know muscle glycogenolysis happens, but that cannot maintain the blood glucose levels beta. Gluconeogenesis happens in the starvation state, and ketone body synthesis also happens in the starvation state beta. And again, ketone body synthesis is not responsible for blood glucose maintenance. It is only responsible to give energy to which organs? Ketone body synthesis happens in the liver, okay, but it is known to give energy to brain and the heart beta. The brain and heart are the main organs definitely beta, which will get the energy basically from the ketone bodies, some amount of skeletal muscles also. Question number 19, if I talk about beta, it is malonate, which is there, bache. It acts as a competitive inhibitor of which among the following? I hope all of you are quite aware, beta, about nothing else but the ETC. What is ETC? Electron transport chain, beta. हमें पता है electron transport chain, just like TCS cycle, is also a vital cycle of the cell which occurs 24/7 in the cell, beta. Now we know how many complexes are there in the ETC? There are total 5 complexes in the ETC beta. We know that complex number 1, known as NADH dehydrogenase, which it is usually inhibited by the group of drugs known as barbiturates, which contain one in their name, that is phenobarbital or rotenone. Even fenformin sometimes beta is known to inhibit complex number 1. Yes, we know that it is known to inhibit complex number 3 also. Fenformin or metformin like drugs, they inhibit both complex number 1 as well as complex number 3. That is what is important to be remembered. So fenformin dono jagah aata hai beta, that is what is important to be remembered. Now if they ask you definitely about complex number 2, complex number 2 is known as succinate coenzyme succinate coenzyme Q reductase beta, also known as succinate dehydrogenase, and this complex number 2 is inhibited by an agent known as malonate beta. Next comes the complex number 3, bache. Complex number 3 is inhibited, complex number 3 also known as cytochrome C reductase beta. This cytochrome C reductase or complex 3 is inhibited by drugs like antimycin or BAL. We know BAL is British anti-Lewisite, also known as dimercaprol beta. BAL is also known as dimercaprol. Next important is complex number 4, Sarkari. Complex number 4 is also known as cytochrome C oxidase bache. And complex 4 of cytochrome C oxidase is mainly inhibited by cyanide beta. Apart from cyanide, it is carbon monoxide and hydrogen sulfide beta. And last is complex number 5 bache. That complex number 5 is mainly inhibited by a drug known as oligomycin. So complex number 5 is inhibited by a drug known as oligomycin. And yaad rakhna that the this is ADP ATP conversion beta, convertase we call it as, or ATP synthase we call it as. And last, I hope all of you remember that the ADP ATP translocase जो मैंने बोला था, which is responsible for transfer of the ATP beta from mitochondria to cytoplasm. This ADP ATP translocase is mainly inhibited by a drug known as atractyloside beta. It is mainly inhibited by a drug called as the atractyloside. That is important to be remembered. Next important, if I talk about uncouplers of ETC, I hope all of you are quite aware. Uncouplers of ETC jo hote hai beta, they cause uncoupling. We know how many processes occurs in ATC. There are 2 processes occurring in ATC hand in hand beta. First, due to electron flow, what is happening? Oxidation beta. And due to ATP synthesis, what is happening? Phosphorylation. So there is oxidation and phosphorylation, both that happens in cases of ETC. Which process is inhibited in cases of uncoupling beta? The phosphorylation or the ATP synthesis is going to stop beta, but the process of oxidation is going to continue definitely in a patient case of uncoupling which that is what is important to be remembered. Now if they ask you definitely about the uncouplers, तो अगर मैं बात करता हूँ फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल बेटा अबाउट द फिजियोलॉजिकल अनकपलर, प्लीज टेल मी अबाउट द फिजियोलॉजिकल अनकपलर दैट वी हैव. Very good. The physiological uncoupler is a hormone which is present in brown fat called as thermogenin, and second is nothing else but your thyroid hormone called as thyroxine beta. Next important, if I talk about pathological uncoupler, which are the drugs basically which are called as pathological uncouplers of ETC? Very important, Sarkari repeated question of your exam. One is 2,4-DNP, that is 2,4-dinitrophenol, and the second one is high doses of aspirin. तुमने क्या पेपर वन छोड़ रखा है क्या तुम लोगों ने? पेपर वन इज नॉट ओनली अबाउट पीएसएम, याद रखना ये बात. पेपर वन इज मच मोर अबाउट एनाटॉमी, फिजियोलॉजी एंड बायोकेमिस्ट्री एज वेल. ठीक है, और ये मैंने बोला हुआ है 10 बार रिपीट करके कि ये तो तुम्हें नींद में भी याद आना चाहिए कि इतनी बार रिपीट हुआ है ये क्वेश्चन. बायोकेम से भले बाकी चीजें भूल जाओ, कौन बोल रहा है पाथवे याद रखो, जरूरत ही नहीं है. इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें याद रख लो बस. कौन बोल रहा है 10 एंजाइम्स के नाम याद रख लो, जरूरत ही नहीं है. इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें विटामिन, मिनरल्स, रेट लिमिटिंग एंजाइम्स, इनहिबिटर्स, these are the things that you need to remember. ग्लाइकोलाइसिस का एक इनहिबिटर दैट इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. हमें पता है बेटा there is an inhibitor called as sodium fluoride. That sodium fluoride is known to inhibit the second last enzyme of glycolysis called as enolase beta. और हमें पता है enolase is present in which vacutainer, which color vacutainer? The gray vacutainer beta, which is used for blood glucose estimation. That is what is important. तो यहाँ पे उन्होंने पूछा that malonate is a inhibitor of which complex? Complex 2 beta. And we know that complex 2 is also known as option A, that is succinate dehydrogenase beta. Succinate thiokinase is an enzyme of TCA cycle बच्चे. Cytochrome C oxidase which is there, it is nothing else but your complex number 4 definitely that is there. Cytochrome C reductase is nothing else but complex number 3 beta. Question number 20, if I talk about beta, it is identify the incorrect statement regarding the mitochondrial DNA. अगर मैं mitochondrial DNA की अगर बात करते हैं अपन, तो I hope all of you are quite aware about the differences between the nuclear DNA and the mitochondrial DNA बेटा. हमें पता है that nuclear DNA or the nuclear genome is going to form 99% of your DNA beta, whereas mitochondrial DNA or mitochondrial genome, it is only 1% of your total DNA. Now, हमें पता है that nuclear genome is formed out of 3 billion base pairs beta, but mitochondrial DNA is formed out of approximately 16,500 base pairs. Next, the proteins that are used for packaging of nuclear DNA are known as histones. Very very important beta. That histone proteins जो होते हैं definitely बच्चे, they are used for definitely packaging of the nuclear DNA into structures called as nucleosomes. This has been a previous year question of your examination beta. याद रखना है बात, ठीक है. हिस्टोन इज फॉर्म्ड आउट ऑफ बेसिक अमाइनो एसिड्स लाइक arginine. That is what is important to be remembered. Clear? Whereas we know that definitely mitochondrial DNA does not have any kind of packaging beta, so therefore it does not have any kind of histone proteins. Next, the nuclear DNA is known to follow the Mendelian pattern of inheritance. वही 4 patterns: autosomal recessive, autosomal dominant, X-linked recessive, X-linked dominant. But mitochondrial DNA beta, it only follows a maternal inheritance. Why? Because we get our mitochondria only and only from the mother. So mitochondrial inheritance मतलब अगर डिसीज मदर में होगा तभी ऑफस्प्रिंग्स में जाएगा. If the disease is present in mother, then it will go to 100% of her children. But if the disease is present in the father, it will not go to any of his children. Beta, that is what is important to be remembered. Clear? So याद रखना, mitochondrial DNA follows maternal inheritance. You get your mitochondrial DNA from the mother itself. Now we know that your nuclear DNA has 93% of the non-coding sequences. What are non-coding sequences? Introns or exons? Introns basically beta. और हमें पता है that presence of introns is actually going to decrease the risk of mutations beta. ठीक है? But the like mitochondrial DNA either contain no non-coding sequences or no introns, or it contains even less than 3% of the non-coding sequences or introns. Therefore, here the risk of mutation will be high or low? High beta. That is important. We know that in cases of nuclear DNA, which the replication is dependent upon mitosis, but in mitochondrial DNA, the replication is independent of the mitosis. मतलब भले cell division हो ना हो बेटा, that mitochondrial DNA can divide. That is what is important. And lastly, we know nuclear DNA ka there will be one copy per cell beta, but mitochondrial DNA ka there will be multiple copies per cell. That is what is important. As I've told you, there will be low risk of mutations definitely in a case of a nuclear DNA, and high risk of mutations in a case of a mitochondrial DNA. Up, let's talk about one by one. Option A says it is linear double-stranded DNA structure, beta. हमें पता है that nuclear DNA is surely a linear double-stranded DNA structure, but mitochondrial DNA is surely a double-stranded DNA structure, but it is not linear, beta. It is going to be circular. It is a circular double-stranded DNA structure, just like a prokaryotic cell, beta. High mutation rate, yes, that's true. Made up of 16,500 base pairs, yes, that's true. Inherited from the mother, yes, surely that's true. Answer has to be option A, which is a wrong or an incorrect statement, beta. It is not linear double-stranded, it is circular double-stranded, beta, the mitochondrial DNA. Hopefully clear to all of you now. So do remember this. These are important points to remember. दो rules जो important है nucleotides है. First important, if I say, beta, that the number of purines which are there basically, it is equal to the number of pyrimidines. I hope all of you are quite aware now that purines and pyrimidines are going to be the nitrogenous bases, beta. तो हमें पता है that the number of purines should always be equal to number of pyrimidines. Which are the two purines? A plus G, that is adenine and guanine, beta. Their number should be equal to the number of pyrimidines. What are the two pyrimidines? Thymine and cytosine, beta, definitely. ठीक है, तो इनके नंबर से इक्वल होना चाहिए. That is what is known as which rule? Shargaff's rule, beta. So that is what is important, PYQ again. So Shargaff's rule, which is there definitely, which is, it says that number of purines should be equal to the number of pyrimidines. And another rule is going to be the base pairing rule, beta. A base pairing rule क्या बोलता है? Which nitrogenous base should pair up with which nitrogenous base, beta. तो हमें पता है one purine should always pair up with another pyrimidine, beta. मतलब adenine should always pair up with thymine with double or triple hydrogen bond. With double hydrogen bond, beta. Whereas guanine is a purine which should always bind up with cytosine, which is a pyrimidine with how many hydrogen bonds? Triple hydrogen bonds, beta. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. So yeah, Rakna, this is known as the base pairing rule. Question number 21. यहाँ पे slight correction है basically, beta. This option was ये C है basically, not G. ठीक है, this should be C, not G basically, beta. ठीक है, तो now definitely if I talk about, they have asked you which among the following sequences बच्चे is most likely to be recognized, beta, by the restriction enzyme. Now restriction enzyme is also called as restriction endonuclease enzyme, and restriction and endonuclease enzyme only cuts at those sites, beta, in the DNA wherever we are having palindromes or palindromic sequences. अब ये क्या होता है palindromes? पैलेंड्रोम और पैलेंड्रोमिक सीक्वेंसेस, बेटा, हियर जो दोनों सीक्वेंस होती है विच आर कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री टू ईच अदर, बोथ दीज कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री सीक्वेंसेस विल रीड सेम, बेटा. जब तुम इनको पढ़ोगे ये सेम होंगी बेसिकली. हाउ? अंडरस्टैंड. फॉर एग्जांपल इफ आई टॉक अबाउट फर्स्ट स्ट्रैंड इज गोइंग फ्रॉम 5' टू 3' डायरेक्शन, बेटा. इस पे द सीक्वेंस इज गोइंग टू बी GAATTC. अब हमें पता है ऑन द अपोजिट स्ट्रैंड और ऑन द कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री स्ट्रैंड, बेटा, ऑब्वियसली द कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री और द बेस पेयर्स शुड बी प्रेजेंट. मतलब G के सामने क्या आना चाहिए? C. A के सामने T. A के सामने T. T के सामने A. और T के सामने A. एंड लास्टली C के सामने G. अब यहाँ पे द सीक्वेंस है CTTAAG. तुम बोलोगे कैसे सेम हुई? बट आई होप ऑल ऑफ यू आर क्वाइट अवेयर, बेटा, जब रीडिंग करते हो तो रीडिंग इज ऑलवेज एंड ऑलवेज डन फ्रॉम 5' टू 3' डायरेक्शन, भले ही तुम कौन सी भी सीक्वेंस या कौन सी भी स्ट्रैंड पढ़ रहे हो, बेटा. तो जब तुम फर्स्ट स्ट्रैंड की सीक्वेंस पढ़ोगे इट विल साउंड एज GAATTC. सेकेंड स्ट्रैंड की जब सीक्वेंस पढ़ोगे इट विल साउंड एज GAATTC. तो कैन आई से दैट ऑन बोथ द कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री स्ट्रैंड्स, बेटा, द सीक्वेंस इज गोइंग टू रीड और साउंड सेम? यस. तो दिस सीक्वेंस विल बी कॉल्ड एज अ पैलिंड्रोमिक सीक्वेंस. अब उन्होंने अगर पूछा है, बेटा, तो कौन सा, तो इसका बना लोगे अगर GAATTC, द सेम सीक्वेंस आई हैव गिवन, तो इसका क्या बन जाएगा? CTTAAG. अब इसी को उल्टा पढ़ोगे तो यू विल गेट द सेम थिंग, बेटा, दैट इज GAATTC. सो दैट्स द रीजन द करेक्शन वाज नीडेड. होपफुली दैट्स क्लियर. तो आंसर हैज टू बी ऑप्शन डी, बेटा. याद रखना, बाकी किसी भी सीक्वेंस का अगर तुम कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री सीक्वेंस बनाते हो, बेटा, इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू रीड और इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू साउंड सिमिलर, बेटा. यू कैन ट्राई इट. You can see that no other sequence will sound similar. Clear? So that is what is important to be remembered. हम्म कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री सीक्वेंस अगर आइडेंटिफाई करना है तो अभी जो किया वही करना है बेसिकली। अब इसमें फॉर एग्जांपल इफ आई गिव यू टू एग्जांपल्स, अंडरस्टैंड। पहला क्वेश्चन जो है बेटा, कि अगर उन्होंने दिया हुआ है तुम्हें mRNA का सीक्वेंस बेटा, आई हैव गिवन यू अ सीक्वेंस ऑफ मैसेंजर आरएनए एंड दैट मैसेंजर आरएनए का सीक्वेंस लेट सी इट इज GAA, हाँ CCT, ठीक है। द लेट्स कंसिडर द मैसेंजर आरएनए का, सॉरी मैसेंजर आरएनए का सीक्वेंस विल बी GAA CCU। इंस्टेड ऑफ टी वी हैव यू बेसिकली ऑन द मैसेंजर आरएनए बेटा। तो याद रखना, अब इन्होंने पूछा है कि आइडेंटिफाई द सीक्वेंस ऑफ द टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड। मैंने दो चीजें लिखवाई है बायोकेमिस्ट, दैट प्लीज रिमेंबर बेटा द सीक्वेंस ऑन द मैसेंजर आरएनए एंड द टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड विल बी सेम और लाइक कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री। कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री बेटा, हमें ये तो पता है कि सीक्वेंस ऑन द मैसेंजर आरएनए एंड सीक्वेंस ऑन द टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड शुड ऑलवेज बी कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री टू ईच अदर। तो अब इसकी कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री सीक्वेंस बताओ, जी के आगे C, then TT, then GG, and then A बेटा, राइट। टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड डीएनए का होता है, टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड आरएनए का नहीं होता, ठीक है। सो दैट इज व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट। यू डोंट यूज टेम्पलेट एज आरएनए, यू यूज टेम्पलेट एज डीएनए, इसीलिए इट इज कॉल्ड एज डीएनए डिपेंडेंट आरएनए पॉलीमरेज एंजाइम, दैट इज ट्रांसक्रिप्टेज एंजाइम, क्लियर। तो डीएनए को ही तो सेपरेट करते हो, फिर एक स्ट्रैंड को टेम्पलेट बनाते हो, दूसरे को नॉन टेम्पलेट बनाते हो, तब जाके आरएनए बनाते हो ना ट्रांसक्रिप्शन से, दैट इज द प्रोसेस। अब अगर उन्होंने पूछा है कि नॉन टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड आइडेंटिफाई करो, तो मुझे बताओ नॉन टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड जो होगी वो कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री होगी या सेम होगी? वो सेम होती है बेटा। नॉन कॉम्प्लीमेंट सॉरी टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड होती है कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री, और जो नॉन टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड होती है बेसिकली बेटा वो एग्जैक्टली सेम होगी, किसकी सीक्वेंस के साथ? mRNA की सीक्वेंस के साथ बेटा, ठीक है। तो अब mRNA की सीक्वेंस क्या है? GAA CCU, यही सेम सीक्वेंस होगी क्या? बस वेरी गुड, एक ही चेंज होगा, दैट इज GAA CCT बेटा। क्यों? क्योंकि अभी किसकी बात हो रही है? नॉन टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड ऑफ डीएनए, और हमें पता है दैट डीएनए स्ट्रैंड्स में एक चीज होती है डेफिनेटली, एंड दैट इज गोइंग टू बी टी बेटा, दैट यू हैव टू राइट डाउन, एंड दिस इज गोइंग टू बी द सेम वन। अब याद रखना, when they have given you a sequence of messenger RNA and they have asked you to identify the sequence of the template strand, you will definitely do this beta. But are you going to answer it as CTTGEA, or you are going to answer it as AGGTTC? You are always going to answer it in the reverse direction beta, that is AGGTTC, क्योंकि हमें पता है that template strand will always be in the 3' to 5' direction, तो उसको उल्टा पढ़ना पड़ेगा बेटा हमें, that is from AGGTTC। टेम्पलेट नॉन सी टेम्पलेट स्ट्रैंड की सीक्वेंस तुम्हें उल्टी पढ़नी पड़ती है, नॉन टेम्पलेट की सीक्वेंस उल्टी पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं होती है, क्लियर है बात? दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट। क्वेश्चन नंबर 22 इजी, अ पेशेंट प्रेजेंट। वो प्रूफ रीडिंग है, प्रूफ रीडिंग उल्टा घूम के किया जाता है बेसिकली। सिंथेसिस हमेशा 5' to 3' होता है, प्रूफ रीडिंग उल्टा किया जाता है। अ पेशेंट प्रेजेंट्स टू द ओपीडी डेफिनेटली बेटा विद लॉन्ग स्टैंडिंग हिस्ट्री ऑफ टिंगलिंग सेंसेशन इन द एक्सट्रीमिटीज बेटा, ओके, along with below given finding with what is the likely vitamin deficiency? Straight forward question है, हमें पता है that tingling sensation in the extremities is suggestive of peripheral neuropathy beta. So we know that tingling sensation, paresthesias, numbness in the periphery is suggestive of peripheral neuropathy. So peripheral neuropathy happens due to two vitamin deficiencies beta. One is going to be a case of vitamin B6, that is pyridoxine, and second is going to be vitamin B12 deficiency beta, that is cobalamin. तो हमें पता है either due to vitamin B6 deficiency or either due to vitamin B12 deficiency beta, patient develops peripheral neuropathy. Which vitamin excess is known to cause peripheral neuropathy? B6। हमें पता है तीसरा cause जो peripheral neuropathy cause कर सकता है, that is also excess of vitamin B6, that is hypervitaminosis B6 can also cause peripheral neuropathy. Next क्या दिख रहा है पिक्चर में दिया हुआ? In picture we have we are able to see beta fissuring of tongue basically, तो you are able to see fissuring of tongue that has been given to you। हमें पता है पेरिफेरल न्यूरोपैथी बहुत सारे कंडीशंस में दिखती है, बट फिशरिंग ऑफ टंग इज ओनली अ फीचर ऑफ विच कंडीशन? Vitamin B12, that is cobalamin deficiency beta. So that's the reason definitely the answer to this question has to be option B, that is adenosyl cobalamin, which is an active form of vitamin B12 beta. Flavin mononucleotide is active form of विटामिन B2 दैट इज राइबोफ्लाविन बेटा। जब राइबोफ्लाविन की डेफिशिएंसी होती है पेशेंट में फिशरिंग ऑफ टंग नहीं दिखता, पेशेंट में इधर मजेंटा टंग दिखता है या जोग्राफिक टंग दिखता है बेटा, दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट। सेकंड, द पेशेंट विल हैव अ क्लासिकल ट्रायड दैट इज गोइंग टू बी atrophic glossitis, chelosis and angular stomatitis बेटा, along with circumcorneal neovascularization बेटा। ठीक है, so that is what is seen in riboflavin deficiency or ariboflavinosis। निकोटिनामाइड दैट इज विटामिन B3 और नियासिन बेटा, इसकी डेफिशिएंसी में वी सी द क्लासिकल पेलाग्रा बेटा, दैट इज द 6th डिसीज, डायरिया, डर्मेटाइटिस, डिमेंशिया, डेथ, डेलीरियम एंड डिप्रेशन। नेक्स्ट, pyridoxal phosphatase vitamin B6 deficiency, इसमें yes peripheral neuropathy will surely be seen beta, but fissuring of tongue is not a feature here। Along with peripheral neuropathy patient may develop which kind of anemia? A microcytic hypochromic anemia, and that microcytic hypochromic anemia is known as sideroblastic anemia beta, that is what is important to be remembered। अब अगर मैं बात करता हूँ definitely what is this feature, you are able to see teardrop cells along with hyper segmented neutrophils and macrovalocytes। This is a peripheral blood smear of which anemia? We know this is a classical picture of megaloblastic anemia। If megaloblastic anemia is given, then please tell me it is likely due to which vitamin deficiency? Which supplements you will give? B9 and B12। जब तक पता नहीं हो दोनों के दोनों सप्लीमेंट्स देने होते हैं, प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट। ठीक है, नाउ व्हेन आई हैव टू डेफिनेटली डिफरेंशिएट बेटा वेदर इट इज अ B9 दैट इज फॉलिक एसिड डेफिशिएंसी और अ विटामिन B12 दैट इज B12 डेफिशिएंसी, तो कैन आई यूज डेफिनेटली बेटा द homocysteine levels? No, why? Because homocysteine levels will be elevated in both the condition बेटा। हमें पता है that homocysteine metabolism के लिए 3 vitamins are required, vitamin B6, B9 and B12। तो if B6, B9 or B12 are deficient, the homocysteine levels of the patient will be elevated, so those will not be a differentiating feature। differentiating feature is serum MMA levels beta, that is methyl malonic acid levels। We know that serum MMA levels are normal in patients of vitamin B9 that is folic acid deficiency and elevated in patients of vitamin B12 or cobalamin deficiency। Hopefully that's clear to all of you, so that is important to be remembered। Next important, we know in B12 deficiency beta patient can also develop this feature, and that is nothing else but geographic tongue। Here you are able to see some whitish and reddish patches on the tongue which looks like a map, so this is known as a geographic tongue beta, which can be seen in either vitamin B2 or vitamin B12 deficiency beta, that is what is important to be remembered। No issues with this। Apart from this, in cases of vitamin B12 deficiency there is a severe condition when there is damage to the dorsal column of spinal cord called as, it is basically beta the sact of spinal cord, that is subacute combined degeneration of spinal cord। So subacute combined degeneration of spinal cord beta is also a classical feature of vitamin B12 deficiency itself beta। Clear? Vitamin B9 deficiency की अगर मैं बात करूं, one condition can be megaloblastic anemia, other condition can be neural tube defects beta। If folic acid deficiency happens during pregnancy, the fetus is going to suffer from neural tube defects। Clear है बात? So that is about B9 and B12 deficiency beta, that is what is important to be remembered। No issues with this? Chalo, question number 23, if I talk about बच्चे, which among the following is the most abundant protein found inside the human body beta? The most abundant protein found in the human body, answer has to be option D, that is collagen। Straightforward beta। Why? Most abundant protein is collagen because every other structure in the body is formed out of collagen। Skin, blood vessels, tendons, ligaments, bones, cartilage, कुछ भी बोलो वो collagen से ही तो बना हुआ है। That is what is important to be remembered। अब अगर मैं बोलूं collagen is a pure protein or a glycoprotein, तो याद रखना collagen is basically a glycoprotein, some amount of carbohydrate is there। Important, कितने types का होता है collagen? There are total 28 types of collagen in human body beta that have been found। Clear? Which is the most abundant which is the most abundant amino acid found in collagen? हमें पता है collagen is mainly formed out of 3 amino acid, one is glycine, second is hydroxyproline and third is hydroxylysine। Answer, most abundant amino acid which makes up the collagen beta, it is nothing else but glycine, that is what is important to be remembered। Clear about that is important। collagen synthesis में which vitamin is necessary? Very good। तो collagen synthesis के लिए बेटा one vitamin and one mineral is necessary। The vitamin necessary is known as vitamin C beta. And the mineral necessary is known as? The first enzyme known as lysyl and prolyl hydroxylase requires vitamin C, but the last enzyme known as lysyl oxidase, all the oxidases require copper beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Clear about? So these are the points that you need to remember about collagen. अगर वो पूछते हैं that which is the most abundant plasma protein, answer would be albumin. तो प्लीज रिमेंबर जिन्होंने एल्ब्यूमिन मार्क किया क्वेश्चन ढंग से पढ़ते जाओ. प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट द मोस्ट अबंडेंट प्लाज्मा प्रोटीन अगर पूछा जाता तो यस देन माय आंसर वुड हैव बीन albumin beta. That is what is important to be remembered. No issues with this. Do remember this. No issues. Elastin which is there beta, again elastin is a glycoprotein bache and it is responsible for stretchability that it is going to provide beta. Hopefully clear. If I talk about the few important types of collagen, तो अगर मैं बात करता हूँ कोलेजन टाइप 1 की बेटा, तो प्लीज टेल मी, वी नो दैट कोलेजन टाइप 1 इज गोइंग टू बी द मोस्ट abundant type of collagen. Why? Because it is found usually in the skin, bone, tendons, ligaments, almost everywhere beta. And defect in collagen type 1 is known to develop which condition or which disease? Very good. So please remember beta that defect in collagen type 1 is known to develop a condition known as osteogenesis imperfecta. Classical triad. 1. The patient will have recurrent bony fractures. Second, the patient will have blue sclera. And third, the patient will have sensory neural hearing loss. Next important, if I talk about collagen type 2 beta. Collagen type 2 is found in कार्टिलेज. हमें पता है बेटा कार्टुलेज याद रख लो. तो कार्टिलेज या कार्टुलेज में यू आर एबल टू फाइंड कोलेजन टाइप 2 बेटा. नेक्स्ट कोलेजन टाइप 3 इज फाउंड इन yes, collagen type 3 is either found in the skin of the patient, in the blood vessels of the patient, and most importantly it is the first collagen to appear during wound healing beta. That means it is found inside the granulation tissue beta. That is important. अगर वो बोलते हैं that if there is a defect in collagen type 3, then it is known to cause which condition? It is EDS beta, known as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome type 4. So Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is going to be caused by collagen type 3 defect, but more commonly it is caused by collagen type 5 defect. That is important. Collagen type 4 is present in basement membrane beta, and if the collagen type 4 is defective, the basement membrane is defective, and the patient is known to develop a which condition? Alport syndrome beta. Alport syndrome में there is a classical triad, that is can't see, can't pee, can't hear beta. Can't see because patient has anterior lenticonus. Can't pee because patient has glomerulonephritis, and can't hear because patient has sensory neural hearing loss. That is important. Collagen type 5 की अगर मैं बात करूं बेटा, it is usually found inside the skin of the patient, and collagen type 5 which is found inside the skin of the patient, if that is defective, then the patient is again known to develop which condition? EDS, that is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is the classical Ehlers-Danlos syndrome beta, and that is going to be the most common as well. So the classical variety of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is usually due to the type 5 collagen defect. Hopefully clear. And type 6, type 7 and type 17 जो होता है, if that is defective, the patient develops a condition known as epidermolysis bullosa. Question number 24, beta, if they ask you, here we are having, they are saying a polymerase chain reaction of PCR has been used to identify gene mutations and detection of infections like COVID-19 beta with the help of amplification of DNA. हमें पता है, what we do in PCR is we amplify the number of DNA copies and then we either detect the infection or we identify the gene mutations beta. Which among the following enzyme is having a primary role in the RT-PCR beta? क्यों? हमें पता है that here we only amplify the DNA copies, but COVID-19 is which kind of a virus? It is a RNA virus बेटा. तो अब अगर RNA virus को तुम्हें PCR से identify करना है तो क्या करना पड़ेगा सबसे पहले? We have to definitely take the RNA of the COVID-19 virus beta and convert that RNA of the COVID-19 virus into a complementary DNA bache. And when we definitely make the complementary DNA with the help of the RNA of the virus beta, then we will send that complementary DNA for amplification and then we will identify it. Now important is if I talk about RNA से DNA जब बना रहे उल्टा बना रहे, normally we make RNAs from DNA बेटा. RNA की मदद से DNA बनाया जा रहा है, तो this is transcription or reverse transcription? तो obviously बेटा this process is basically called as reverse transcription, and जब reverse transcription होता है the enzyme is also known as reverse transcriptase. transcriptase. So it is RT-PCR, matlab reverse transcriptase PCR. And that reverse transcriptase PCR is also known as RNA, क्या बोलते हो? RNA dependent DNA polymerase. So the enzyme is known as RNA dependent DNA polymerase beta. That is nothing else but reverse transcriptase beta. So answer has to be option B, that is reverse transcriptase. See, we know that they have asked specifically about the RT-PCR, which is, therefore we have answered it as reverse transcriptase. If they would have only asked about PCR, तो हमें पता है the primary role in PCR is definitely of the enzyme known as Taq polymerase. So Taq polymerase is the most important, definitely the enzyme required in process of PCR. Why? Because in PCR, beta, we definitely do the polymerization or synthesis at higher temperatures. So we need a special enzyme which can survive at higher temperature, and that is Taq polymerase. ये previous year question तुम्हारा exam का. DNA polymerase and RNA polymerase are definitely the usual enzymes that we use beta in the process of DNA replication or the transcription process respectively. Clear? Chalo, next important if I talk about is question number 25 beta. It says a child has been brought to you beta with history of recurrent infections and hypopigmentation of skin. So hypopigmentation of skin definitely is happening because there is decreased production of a skin pigment known as melanin beta. Okay, and melanin का अगर decreased production हो जाता है and इसीलिए the patient completely appears white beta, that condition is classically known as albinism. And albinism occurs due to deficiency of which enzyme? Albinism happens due to deficiency of an enzyme which is the rate limiting enzyme for melanin synthesis known as tyrosinase beta. So यहाँ पे the patient is having recurrent infection along with hypopigmentation of skin बच्चे. The patient also has intellectual disability, that is mental retardation, and genetic analysis reveals there is a defect in this gene. Directly तो दिया हुआ है सब कुछ. We know that if there is a defect in the list gene or the list protein, what is the most probable diagnosis? Answer has to be the Chediak-Higashi syndrome. That is option A beta. हमें पता है that when the list genes or list proteins are defective, there will be difficulty in what? Phagolysosomal fusion beta. तो हमें पता है for bacterial killing, what needs to happen is the phagolysosomal fusion, and then the lysosomal enzymes will kill the bacteria. But if there is a defect in the phagolysosomal fusion beta, the bacterial killing will not happen, and that is the reason why the patient develops recurrent infections beta. Along with that, we know the patient is also known to have oculocutaneous albinism बच्चे, and the patient is also known to have intellectual disability. This is the classical triad of Chediak-Higashi syndrome due to a less gene mutation. That is important to be remembered. Pattern of inheritance followed is going to be autosomal recessive. Chronic granulomatous disease is another condition beta which follows which pattern of inheritance? X-linked recessive beta, that is boys will have the disease, females will just be the carriers. And chronic granulomatous disease जो होता है बेटा, it is mainly due to deficiency of the enzyme required for oxygen dependent killing of bacteria. I hope all of you are quite aware that oxygen dependent killing of bacteria is mainly done by an enzyme called as NADPH oxidase. So please remember that chronic granulomatous disease happens when there is definitely a deficiency of NADPH oxidase enzyme, and that happens due to which gene mutation? Very good. That happens due to a FOX gene mutation beta. So when there is a FOX gene mutation, definitely then the patient has NADPH oxidase deficiency, and that is known to cause chronic granulomatous disease, जहाँ पे patient will again have recurrent infections beta. Along with recurrent infections, patient is also going to have granulomas whenever you do any kind of biopsy beta. कोई भी organ की biopsy ले लो, granulomas दिख जाएंगे तुम्हें, ठीक है? Hereditary angioedema happens basically due to complement deficiency. जब complement की deficiency होती है बेटा, so definitely again bacterial killing is affected, and the patient may develop a hereditary angioedema, that is swelling of lips वगैरह is going to happen. Complement 2 deficiency is again known to increase the risk of bacterial infections like the Neisseria infections बेटा. ठीक है, यहाँ पे देख सकते हो अगर B cell में defect है बेटा, we know that B cells which are there or B lymphocytes, they will modify into which cells? Plasma cells, and they are known to respond, they are known responsible for the production of antibodies, that is immunoglobulins beta. But agar B cell में defect hai, so antibodies are not formed, and therefore the patient will have infections due to bacteria or helminths like Giardia lamblia. And the conditions due to B cell defect will be X-linked A gamma globulinemia. What is another name for X-linked A gamma globulinemia? Bretton's disease. ठीक है, तो the Bretton's disease or Bretton's A gamma globulinemia is going to happen. Or patient may also have IgA deficiency. We know that IgA or immunoglobulin A is mainly present in all the secretions of the body, which is the only pentavalent antibody. IgM beta. IgM is the pentavalent antibody beta, which is going to be the largest antibody. Again, IgM is the largest antibody beta. Which antibody can cross the placenta? IgG antibody is the one beta which can cross the placenta. That is important. Next, hyper IgM syndrome can also occur beta, or a condition known as SCID can also occur. हमें पता है SCID is severe combined immunodeficiency. Combined immunodeficiency में there is not only a problem with B cells but even along with the T cells beta. So if I talk about T cells defect now, T cell or T lymphocytes, if they are defective, बच्चे, patient will be susceptible to develop infections due to virus or infections like candida beta. We know T cell defect is happening when the thymus does not develop in a condition known as Digeorge syndrome. So Digeorge syndrome or catch 22 में thymus doesn't develop beta, or a condition known as SCID, again severe combined immunodeficiency. वहां पे B on T cell defect दोनों होता है. Next is complement deficiency. Complement deficiency में the most common complement deficient is C2 बेटा, याद रखना. The most common complement अगर deficient पूछे तो answer has to be the C2. ठीक है, but another complement that can be deficient is MAC, that is membrane attack complex. MAC deficiency or membrane attack complex deficiency is due to deficiency of which complements? हमें पता है MAC or membrane attack complex which kills the bacteria is formed by C5 to C9. And any complement deficiency, whether it is a C2 deficiency beta or it is a C5 to C9 deficiency, it doesn't matter. The most common infection will always remain Neisseria, PYQ होता ही है. Next important, हमें पता है if there is a defect in the free radical generation beta, okay, so free radical generation is usually done by the oxygen dependent mechanisms, and for that we need an enzyme called as NADPH oxidase, and that is definitely absent in patients of CGD, that is chronic granulomatous disease. Or free radical generation की कमी आएगी in patients of myeloperoxidase deficiency as well beta, and the patient will be susceptible to develop infections with catalase positive organisms बच्चे. That is what is important to be remembered. No issues with this. If they ask you beta what is going to be an important cause for SCID, which enzyme deficiency? हमें पता है SCID which is there or severe combined immunodeficiency happens due to deficiency of an enzyme called as, very good, adenosine deaminase beta. So main cause basically is going to be an enzyme deficiency known as adenosine deaminase. Another cause is going to be a DNA repair defect. What is a DNA repair defect? तो हमें पता है बेटा, it is a non-homologous end joining repair का defect. तो non-homologous end joining repair का अगर defect हो जाता है, that is known to cause a condition known as SCID as well beta. Clear? Question number 26, if I talk about, here we are having a 65-year-old patient beta who has a long history of, the patient is having a long history of low back ache bache, along with complaints like fatigue and pallor beta. The patient is having fatigue and pallor. Lab workup reveals elevated serum creatinine levels beta. What is the likely amyloid deposited in this patient? What is the likely diagnosis of the patient? Very good. Elderly patient coming to you with a history of low back ache along with symptoms of anemia like fatigue and pallor beta. ठीक है, तो symptoms of anemia like fatigue and pallor will be there. Along with that, the patient is also having elevated serum creatinine levels, that is suggestive of renal failure. मैंने परसों ही बताया था definitely बेटा, whenever a elderly patient comes to you with low backache along with features like anemia and renal failure beta or bony lytic lesions, you have to think in terms of nothing else but multiple myeloma. And I hope all of you are quite aware. We know that multiple myeloma is a plasma cell malignancy. अभी देखा हमने plasma cell are responsible for production of antibodies. तो जब multiple myeloma होता है, which is a plasma cell malignancy, patient has production of multiple light chains of antibodies. Which chains mainly? Kappa or lambda? Mainly kappa chains are produced in excess beta in patients of multiple myeloma. बोलो, अब अगर patient में multiple myeloma है, तो light chains are produced in excess, तो which amyloid will be deposited? Answer has to be option A beta. L stands for the light chain. So answer has to be option A. That is the amyloid light chain is going to be deposited beta. ठीक है, यहाँ पे देख सकते हो. You are able to see beta familial Mediterranean fever. In this condition, the amyloid deposited is known as serum amyloid A beta. Next, medullary thyroid cancer. We all know the amyloid that will be deposited, bache, is nothing else but A cal beta, that is calcitonin. Next important, systemic senile amyloidosis beta. Here the amyloid deposited is going to be ATTR, that is all trans thyretin bache. Next, familial amyloidotic polyneuropathy. Here the amyloid deposited is going to be the mutant variant of all trans thyretin beta. Next, Alzheimer's disease mein, there are two amyloids which are usually deposited. One is known as A beta or amyloid beta, or second is tau protein. Whereas definitely in patients who are suffering from hemodialysis beta, here there will be A beta 2, that is amyloid beta 2 beta microglobulin definitely. ठीक है, तो याद रखना A beta is deposited in Alzheimer's disease, but A beta 2 is deposited in hemodialysis patients beta. Next important is diabetes mellitus में it is AIAPP beta. Okay, and lastly it is multiple myeloma जो अभी देखा हमने, that it is going to be AL, that is amyloid light chain beta, which will be deposited. Hopefully that's clear. बताओ which is going to be the best stain in cases of amyloid? Very good. The Congo red stain is going to be the best stain basically beta to be used in cases of amyloid. And वहाँ पे कैसा appearance दिखेगा amyloid का? It will give us pinkish amorphous appearance बराबर. So please remember, a pinkish amorphous appearance on a Congo red stain is a classical picture of amyloid. In patients of generalized amyloidosis, what is the investigation of choice? In cases of generalized amyloidosis, what is the investigation of choice? Abdominal fat pad biopsy beta. So abdominal fat pad aspiration or abdominal fat pad biopsy is the investigation of choice in patients of generalized amyloidosis. Important to be remembered. Clear? Amyloid, which is a abnormal or misfolded protein beta, it happens due to defect in which proteins? Chaperones. We know the proteins responsible for protein folding are known as chaperones. So if chaperones are defective, there is misfolding of proteins leading to formation of amyloids in the patient beta. Clear? Question number 27, if they ask you. Here we have a patient beta who has been diagnosed with a case of chronic liver disease beta, that is cirrhosis, and he has been advised to undergo liver transplantation. His paternal twin beta has been identified as a match. Which type of grafting this would be considered as? Answer. So if I talk about beta, first of all, one by one, what is an isograft? Isograft is any graft that is taken from an identical twin, also known as the monozygotic twin, also known as the maternal twin. That is what is important to be remembered. Whereas if I talk about allograft, it is any graft beta that is basically taken from the same species beta. That is anybody in your family or any unrelated person, or even any of your siblings, or even which kind of twin? A paternal twin, also known as a dizygotic twin beta, or a non-identical twin basically. Okay. Next is an autograft. Autograft is taken from same body beta or self basically. The graft that is taken from own body or self is autograft. And xenograft is taken from different species beta. The graft that is taken from different species or animals will be xenograft. So यहाँ पे उन्होंने paternal twin बोला, that is a dizygotic twin बोला है, तो answer has to be nothing else but option B, that is an allograft. That is important to be remembered. ये चिल्ला चिल्ला के बोला है मैंने कितनी बार कि isograft is only identical or a monozygotic or a maternal twin. That has to be kept in mind. Clear? Important. If I talk about beta about graft rejection, कितने type के graft rejections होते हैं basically? There are mainly three types of graft rejection beta. First is hyperacute, second is acute, and third is going to be chronic beta. Now, if I talk about basically the hyperacute graft rejection, bache, so please tell me, hyperacute graft rejection will occur within, it will occur within minutes to hours beta after the surgery immediately. And this is which type of hypersensitivity? It is a type 2 hypersensitivity, which is cytotoxic or antibody mediated beta. Next, acute graft rejection happens happens during days to weeks beta, or you can even say up to months, or any time less than 6 months. So any graft rejection less than 6 months is acute graft rejection. It is which type of hypersensitivity? Type 2 and type 4 beta, that is cytotoxic as well as delayed hypersensitivity, both is shown by acute graft rejection. Next, chronic graft rejection is going to be happening when? Any graft rejection that happens after 6 months of time beta, it is known as chronic graft rejection. And it is which type of hypersensitivity? It is only a type 4, that is a delayed or a T cell mediated hypersensitivity. Hopefully that's clear to all of you about graft rejection. So do remember about that. Okay? Next important question number 28, if they ask you, beta, is we are having a 36-year-old man who has presented to us with a skin lesion on the trunk, beta, as given below. Okay? And immunohistochemistry was done, bache. Immunohistochemistry can tell you about the presence or absence of tumor markers, beta. Okay? And it will most likely reveal elevated levels of which among the following tumor marker, bolo. What is the provisional diagnosis? Here you are able to see, beta, a brownish or a blackish lesion on the skin of the patient. And this is a provisional diagnosis of a skin cancer called as melanoma. And I hope all of you are quite aware. Melanoma is the most common or the most malignant skin cancer. It is the most malignant skin cancer. Most common skin cancer is squamous cell carcinoma, beta. Most common skin cancer in face is basal cell carcinoma, beta. So, and most malignant or most dangerous skin cancer is melanoma, bache. We know that if I talk about melanoma, beta, so here definitely which tumor marker is going to be positive? Answer has to be option D, that is HMB45, beta. So the tumor markers that are used basically for melanoma, beta, it is usually HMB45. The other can be melan A, beta. Okay. Even S100 can be used as well, beta. Okay. So it is HMB45, it is melan A, and the third one is S100. These are the tumor markers for melanoma, bache. That is what is important. Now, if I talk about which is a universal tumor marker for all the carcinomas, bache. Carcinomas are epithelial or mesenchymal malignancy. Carcinomas are going to be epithelial malignancies, beta. And for all the carcinomas, the universal tumor marker is going to be cytokeratin. Okay. Next, all the mesenchymal malignancies are known as sarcomas, beta. All the mesenchymal malignancies are known as sarcomas. And sarcomas के लिए universal tumor marker is going to be sarcomas के लिए the universal tumor marker is going to be vimentin, beta. So for all the sarcomas, definitely the universal tumor marker is going to be vimentin. Now, if I talk about the other tumor markers, definitely, I hope all of you are quite aware that ovarian cancer के लिए the tumor marker is going to be CA125. It is a common tumor marker. Then there will be individual tumor markers. जैसे कि yolk sac tumor के लिए we have alpha fetoprotein beta. Next, for granulosa cell tumor, we have inhibin B beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Clear है बात? Next, breast cancer के लिए the tumor marker is going to be CA15-3. ये याद रख लेना अच्छे से. This is new one for you. So breast cancer के लिए it is CA15-3 beta. Pancreatic cancer के लिए it is CA19-9 we know. Prostate cancer के लिए it is PSA, that is prostate specific antigen. So colorectal cancer के लिए it is CEA, that is carcino embryonic antigen. Teratomas. Now, whether it is an ovarian teratoma or a testicular teratoma, दोनों के लिए the tumor marker is AFP, that is alpha fetoprotein. Seminoma, which is the most common testicular tumor, the tumor marker is LDH, that is lactate dehydrogenase. I have told you classical seminomas are AFP negative and LDH positive, beta. Choriocarcinoma, which arises from the syncytial trophoblast, it is going to be beta SCG because it is a tumor of placenta. Next, small cell carcinoma of lung, beta. हमें पता है small cell carcinoma of lung और any other neuroendocrine tumors of the body. Neuroendocrine tumors में क्या क्या आता है? Carcinoids as well, beta. ठीक है? तो carcinoid, small cell carcinoma of lung, medullary carcinoma of thyroid, all of these. तो उनके लिए the tumor markers can be neuron specific enolase, but better tumor markers will be chromogranin, beta. The better tumor marker is chromogranin, or another one will be synaptophysin, बच्चे. So these are going to be the tumor markers definitely, beta, that we have for all the neuroendocrine tumors in the body, basically like carcinoids or small cell carcinoma of lung. Gastrinomas, we know it is a part of Zollinger-Ellison syndrome which arises from G cells. And gastrinoma के लिए the tumor marker is going to be gastrin, that's obvious. ठीक है, if I talk about beta for all the thyroid cancers, basically बताओ. For all the thyroid cancer, the tumor marker is going to be, it is serum thyroglobulin, beta. So serum thyroglobulin is definitely the tumor marker for all the thyroid cancers except medullary thyroid cancer. In medullary thyroid cancer, the tumor marker is going to be calcitonin, beta. हमें पता है that medullary thyroid cancer में the tumor marker is going to be serum calcitonin, beta. That is what is important to be remembered. If they ask you what is the tumor marker for GIST, that is gastrointestinal stromal tumor. So the most common tumor marker used is going to be CD117, but best tumor marker is dog 1 beta. The best tumor marker is always dog 1 बच्चे. That is what is important to be remembered. Hopefully no issues with this. तो याद रखना ये बात. ठीक है? Understood? Next important, if I talk about chromogranin for all the neuroendocrine tumors, vimentin for all the sarcomas, beta CD1A is for CD1A हो गया या S100 हो गया या for that matter CD207 that is langerin हो गया. These are the best tumor markers for langerin बोल दिया मैंने अब तो. CD1A, S100, CD207. These are the best tumor markers for LCH, that is Langerhans cell histiocytosis. Beta LCH के लिए they are the best tumor markers, that is important. And calretinin is the best tumor marker for calretinin. बोलो mesothelioma beta. तो mesothelioma जो होता है basically which is a pleura best tumor, there for that definitely the best tumor marker is going to be calretinin. These are the important tumor markers that you need to remember for the examination. Hopefully done. Next question number 29. Easy. We have a new drug beta which had to be launched in the market. So clinical trials were conducted, bache. So clinical trials were underway. In which among the following phase of clinical trial beta, the therapeutic index of the drug is going to be assessed, basically they are asking you. Now, if I talk about, there are total four phases of clinical trials. The fifth phase, that is phase 0, has been added now. Phase 1 may definitely, we do the phase 1 on patients or on healthy volunteers. We know definitely that phase 1 is done on the healthy human volunteers beta, and definitely here it is done to check the safety of the drug beta or the maximum tolerable dose of that particular drug. Next, phase 2 is done for patients beta. हमें पता है from phase 2 onwards in all the other phases also beta, patients will be the unit of study. Phase 2 may definitely beta, what are we going to check? In phase 2 may we have to check definitely the efficacy of the drug beta. Efficacy determination is done in phase 2 itself. Next important, phase 3 may what we do? In phase 3 may definitely beta, we may definitely do a comparison with any existing drug beta. So comparison with the existing drug in market has to be done in phase 3, and that will be done with the help of RCT, that is randomized control trial beta. Phase 4 की अगर मैं बात करूं, it is done after the launch or before the launch? After the launch has been done beta, after phase 3, and here definitely we go for what? We definitely try to check for any kind of long term or any kind of rare side effects beta. So long term or rare side effects के लिए definitely we have to do the phase 4, which is the longest phase. तो हमें पता है the longest phase of clinical trial is always the phase 4, which is the most important phase. Most important phase is always phase 3 beta, because RCT or randomized control trial is conducted in phase 3. Which phase has maximum failure chances? Maximum failure chances are seen in phase 2. Efficacy नहीं होती majority drugs में तो. ठीक है? And which phase will definitely help in assessing the therapeutic index? Therapeutic index tells you about what? If there is a narrow therapeutic index, that drug is called as unsafe. If that drug is having wide therapeutic index, that drug is known as safe. मतलब therapeutic index tells you about the safety of drug, and safety is assessed in phase 1 of the clinical trial. तो बस पढ़ना नहीं होता, दिमाग भी लगाना होता है कभी कभार. ठीक है? तो आंसर हैज टू बी phase 1 बेटा. Safety is nothing else, safety is assessed with the help of therapeutic index ना. तो obviously beta it will be assessed in phase 1 of the clinical trial. No issues with this, anybody? Clear? Phase 0 किसके लिए होता है, anybody? Phase 0 basically it is going to be beta on the healthy human volunteers, and it is done for micro dosing. 1/10 to 1/100 of the dose is going to be given beta to the patient in phase 0. Question number 30, if I talk about, very straightforward question. A 2-year-old child beta has been brought to you with complaints of shallow and rapid breathing. Shallow and rapid breathing is known as tachypnea hai bachche mein. And we know tachypnea happens when the patient has a respiratory difficulty. Along with that, the patient is having nasal flaring. On examination, chest retractions and wheezing are going to be noted beta. अब हमें पता है that chest retractions can be seen in pneumonia also beta, but wheezing is not a feature of pneumonia basically. तो tachypnea and chest retraction जब तक था I would have thought about pneumonia, but definitely जैसे ही wheezing आ जाता है pneumonia नहीं हो सकता, because pneumonia में definitely बेटा there will be crepitations or crackles which will be heard along with bronchial breathing. ठीक है, दैट इज अ फीचर ऑफ निमोनिया. यहाँ पे wheezing है डेफिनेटली, दैट मीन्स देयर इज अ लोअर एयरवे ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन, क्योंकि लोअर एयरवे ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन में द पेशेंट बेसिकली हैज wheezing sound beta. What is the likely drug to be used for nebulization in this child? Now if you see the x-ray, pneumonia के cases में what you are able to see, you are able to see a whitish opacity called as consolidation beta. Are you able to see any consolidation in this patient in the lung field? No. So it is not a diagnosis of pneumonia. तो यहाँ पे क्या दिख रहा है? You can see in this child beta on both the sides definitely the lungs appear to be more inflated or less inflated. More inflated. There is hyperinflation. There is increased blackening or decreased blackening. Increased blackening na, matlab there is air trapping inside the lungs, and due to air trapping inside the lungs there is increased blackening or there is hyperinflation. So there is a hyperlucency on the chest x-ray that you are able to see beta, along with hyperinflation, and due to hyperinflation there is flattening of the diaphragm which is seen on both the sides beta. अब हमें पता है that definitely here the hyperinflation is unilateral or bilateral. Here there is a bilateral hyperinflation beta, so it is more likely due to foreign body or infection. इन्फेक्शन, क्योंकि फॉरेन बॉडी में देयर इज अ यूनिलैटरल हाइपर इन्फ्लेशन. तो यूनिलैटरल हाइपर इन्फ्लेशन होता तो आई वुड हैव थॉट अबाउट अ फॉरेन बॉडी इंजेक्शन, बट यहाँ पे बायलैटरल हाइपर इन्फ्लेशन है, तो इट इज मोर लाइकली टू बी इन्फेक्शन. एंड एनी विच वेज wheezing, chest retractions and the tachypnea are a feature of infection, which is that lower airway infection which is known to cause bilateral hyperinflation. I've told you this. It is the RSV, that is respiratory syncytial virus infection beta, which is very common in children less than 2 to 3 years of age. And this is known to cause a lower airway tract infection known as bronchiolitis basically. And due to bronchiolitis, where bronchioles are going to be infected beta, patient is actually known to develop bilateral hyperinflation and the wheezing sound. And I hope all of you are quite aware now that RSV infection जब भी होता है basically बेटा, तब RSV infection के लिए what has to be the drug that we have to give? Hmm? The nebulization will be given with option C, that is ribavirin. Ribavirin is the drug of choice for respiratory syncytial virus infection. Oseltamivir is the drug of choice for influenza infections. तो जब influenza का infection होता है, then the drug of choice is going to be influenza, and sorry, then the drug of choice is going to be oseltamivir. Previously the drug of choice was amantadine. Important is influenza infection में infants के लिए the dose is going to be 3 mg per kg. That was a PYQ in your examination. 3 mg per kg is the dose of oseltamivir for infants beta. Dexamethasone is a steroid basically. Okay, that is not given commonly beta in children. Nebulization of steroids are not given commonly in children. You can give systemic steroids but not nebulization. Clear है बात? Chalo. So that is important. Question number 31, if I talk about important question of microbiology. A patient presents with abdominal pain along with bloody diarrhea beta and a rectal prolapse. Why rectal prolapse? Because the perineum of the female of the patient has become weak. There is a coconut cake like rectum. Hopefully you might have heard this term. And due to that coconut cake like rectum beta, there is a high chance of rectal prolapse. On microscopy, below given finding is seen, that is nothing else but the egg of an helminth beta. What is the likely organism responsible for this condition? यहाँ पे देख सकते हो कौन सा टाइप का एग या कौन सा शेप का एग दिख रहा है. वेरी गुड. तो यू आर एबल टू सी अ बैरल शेप्ड एग बेटा. ठीक है, तो इफ यू आर एबल टू सी, यस, barrel shaped egg बच्चे. तो barrel shaped egg is a very very classical feature of a whipworm, and that whipworm is known as option A, that is Trichuris trichura beta. Trichuris trichura is known to infect mainly the large intestine or the colon beta, and that is also known to cause basically the coconut cake like rectum, increasing the risk of rectal prolapse. So that is what is important to be remembered about this condition. Next important, if I talk about, this is the egg of, here you are able to see a egg base bache along with blastomeres basically. So inside the egg there is presence of blastomeres beta. What is this egg of? We know that this egg is of ankylostoma duodenale, and ankylostoma duodenale is known to cause It enters from the soil of the patient. It enters from the soil into the soul of the patient, beta, and it is known to cause cutaneous larva migrans. So cutaneous larva migrans is basically called as caused by ankylostoma duodenale. Second, it is also known to cause iron deficiency anemia because it is a blood sucking worm. That is important to be remembered. Next, what are these eggs of? So these are known as plano-convex eggs, beta. On one side it is going to be plain, on another side it is going to be convex. These plano-convex eggs are usually seen in patients of enterobius vermicularis. So enterobius vermicularis is going to be the helminth which has and plano-convex eggs. Now these are the three eggs, beta. First is Schistosoma mansoni. Schistosoma mansoni ke egg mein there is a lateral spine, beta. So when there is a lateral spine, definitely it is a egg of Schistosoma mansoni. Second, it is a egg of Schistosoma hematobium. Schistosoma hematobium के केस में बेटा there is a terminal spine basically. ठीक है, तो terminal spine in the egg is a egg of Schistosoma hematobium, and Schistosoma japonicum has no spine at all, beta. When there is no spine at all, that is the egg of Schistosoma japonicum. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. So do remember this. These are the important points to be remembered. Clear, Ribat? Question number 32, beta. It states a farmer has presented to us, beta, with a history of thorn prick injury basically a year ago. And now the patient has presented to you with varicose lesions, beta. Varicose matlab what like lesions are seen. Okay, following a microscopic findings from the histopathology of the lesion, beta, identify the most probable diagnosis. What is seen over here? Very good. So inside the cells, you are able to see the classical copper penny bodies, beta. Okay, these copper penny bodies are also classically known as the medullary bodies. So either you can call them as copper penny bodies, or I can call them as medullary bodies, or we can call them as sclerotic bodies. Okay, so all of this is one and the same thing. म्यूजिफॉर्म बॉडीज भी बोलते हैं इनको. ठीक है, तो प्लीज रिमेंबर कॉपर पेनी मेडलार स्क्लेरोटिक ऑल ऑफ दिस इज वन एंड द सेम नेम. एंड हमें पता है दैट कॉपर पेनी बॉडीज या मेडलार या स्क्लेरोटिक बॉडीज इज अ वेरी क्लासिकल फीचर, नथिंग एल्स बट इन पेशेंट्स ऑफ ऑप्शन डी क्रोमोब्लास्टोमाइकोसिस. आंसर हैज टू बी ऑप्शन डी, बेटा. इंपॉर्टेंट इज हमें पता है यस हियर दे हैव गिवन अ हिस्ट्री ऑफ थॉर्न प्रिक इंजरी, बट थॉर्न प्रिक इंजरी इज नोन टू कॉज टू कंडीशन. वन इज क्रोमोब्लास्टोमाइकोसिस, सेकंड इज sporotrichosis, which is also known as rose gardener's disease. Yes, it could be a case of sporotrichosis also, beta, but verrucous or wart-like lesions are not seen in patients of sporotrichosis. Here you will be able to find a nodulo-ulcerative lesion, one thing. Second, copper penny bodies are not seen, beta. Rather, the bodies which are seen are known as the asteroid bodies, the pinkish star-shaped bodies that you are able to see, beta. Those are known as asteroid bodies. Asteroid bodies are seen in two conditions. One is sporotrichosis. Second is sarcoidosis, beta. These are the conditions where asteroid bodies are going to be seen. So yaad rakhna, this is a classical case of nothing else but beta, but sporotrichosis in a patient. That is what is important. We know sporotrichosis is caused by a fungus called as Sporothrix skenki, beta. Okay, this also happens basically due to the rose thorn injury or a thorn prick injury, beta. Okay, that is what is important. They will give you a history of rose gardener or a person walking barefoot without shoes in the Himalayas, beta. That is very, very classical about this condition. And as I've told you, sporotrichosis mein the patient has a nodulo ulcerative lesion, beta, along the lymphatics. ठीक है, so please remember definitely. So initially patient develops a nodular ulcerative lesion at one side, but later on, as the lymphatic vessel goes, beta, in the same direction, these nodular ulcerative lesion will keep on increasing, beta. That is a very, very classical feature of sporotrichosis. This is a classical picture of chromoblastomycosis, बच्चे. तो यहाँ पे you are able to see initially there is a ulcerative lesion which develops, beta. ठीक है, later on definitely it shows some growth and then it can show you some varicose growth, beta. ठीक है, so varicose growth definitely is seen in this picture, बच्चे. That is what like growth is going to be seen over here, beta. तो initially यहाँ पे भी ulcer ही होता है, but later on it can grow into a varicose lesion, बच्चे. That is what is a classical feature of chromoblastomycosis, and this also happens basically, beta, due to a thorn prick injury itself. What is the investigation done in both the conditions? Both of them are fungal infections, beta. तो दोनों के लिए डेफिनेटली इन्वेस्टिगेशन में डायग्नोसिस के लिए आई कैन गो फॉर विच माउंट, KOH mount beta, that is potassium hydroxide mount, can be done initially. But what will be a confirmatory diagnosis? Confirmatory diagnosis will be done by culture. Culture for like universal culture media for funguses is SDA, that is Sabarodes dextrose agar beta. SDA is the universal culture media of fungus. That is important. If they ask you what is the drug of choice in both the conditions, beta, the दोनों conditions में the drug of choice is an antifungal drug called as itraconazole. So itraconazole is the antifungal drug, beta. Only trick that I've played with you earlier, beta, in the um, this one TND question was, I have given a case of sporotrichosis itself, but I have said there is lung involvement. Or जब lung involvement या disseminated case होता है, then we have to use a stronger drug, beta, that is liposomal amphotericin B. Then clear. Otherwise, it is itraconazole is sufficient, beta. We know that histoplasmosis usually occurs, beta, if the patient had a contract with pigeons, basically. Okay, and it will have a tuberculosis-like presentation, beta. Patient will have TB-like symptoms, low-grade fever, along with weight loss, definitely, or night sweats, beta, over a very long duration of time. So exactly TB-like features are seen, beta. Blastomycosis, which is there, it is not common usually in these areas. It is more common in the United States, like in the sorry continent of America, beta, in the Northern America, basically. That is what is important. Okay? Chalo. Next important, if I talk about bache, is about this question. Easy again. We have a chronically ill HIV positive male, beta, a chronically ill HIV positive male who develops recurrent infections, bache, and he gives history of raising pigeons. He initially developed pulmonary infection, beta, and eventually presents to his primary care physician, bache, with complaints like headache, along with mental status changes, that is altered sensorium and fever as well, beta. On examination, nuchal rigidity or neck stiffness is present, and CSF analysis reveals there is lymphocytosis, beta. So CSF mein there are a lot of lymphocytes which are present. Which among the following is the best rapid test to diagnose the condition? Answer. First of all, please tell me about the provisional diagnosis of this case. Very good. So we know, beta, that it is a classical diagnosis of cryptococcal meningitis caused by a fungus known as Cryptococcus neoformans. Why it is a case of cryptococcal meningitis? So first of all, it is a case of meningitis, beta, because basically the symptoms which we find is a classical triad of meningitis. And what is that triad? First, the patient is having fever, beta. Second, the patient is having neck rigidity. And third, the patient is having headache. So we know headache, fever, and neck rigidity is the classical triad of meningitis, which is second. Why cryptococcus? We know that cryptococcus is a fungus, beta, and fungal infections of causing meningitis will be more commonly seen in immunocompromised patients like HIV positive patients. Secondly, in fungal infections, beta, there will be lymphocytosis. जैसे lymphocytosis बोल दिया, which type of meningitis was ruled out? Bacterial. Acute bacterial meningitis will have neutrophils, beta, not lymphocytes. That is what is important to be remembered. No issues with this, anybody? So that's the reason. And we know that in cases of cryptococcal infections, beta, there will be again history of contact with pigeon. So history of contact with pigeons is usually seen in two conditions. One is histoplasmosis. Second is going to be cryptococcosis, beta. Okay? So that is important to be remembered. Cryptococcus infection, beta, initially involves the skin, where it can cause definitely an ulcerative lesion. Later on, it can also involve the lungs, beta, where it causes a cavitary lesion. And later on, it can also involve the CNS, causing meningitis. Clear? तो अब मुझे बताओ which is going to be the most rapid, the best rapid test definitely to confirm the diagnosis of cryptococcal meningitis. And answer had to be option B, that is lateral flow assay for cryptococcal antigen. ये मैंने चीक के medicine के TND में बताया था that this was a August 2020 FMG question जहाँ पे पूछा था that definitely which is the best rapid test. Rapid test में दोनों आते हैं बेटा, India ink stain भी और lateral flow assay भी. But a best rapid test will always be a lateral flow assay. Reason, India ink stain is going to be non-specific. It only stains the capsule of Cryptococcus neoformans. अब कैप्सूल वो किसी भी ऑर्गेनिज्म की हो सकती है, वो थोड़ी क्रिप्टोकॉकस ही होगा. ठीक है, तो प्लीज रिमेंबर स्ट्रेप्टोकॉकस निमोनिया में भी पॉजिटिव आ जाएगा वो तो. ठीक है, कैप्सूल को स्टेन करता है ना, वो किसी भी कैप्सूल को स्टेन कर देगा वो तो इसीलिए द बेस्ट टेस्ट इज गोइंग टू बी लैटरल फ्लो एसे फॉर क्रिप्टोकॉकल एंटीजन व्हिच इज रैपिड आल्सो एंड बेटर आल्सो देन इंडिया इंक staining, beta. This is the classical picture of India ink staining where you are able to find, beta, a thick capsule of the Cryptococcus neoformans, which have been stained by the India ink stain beta. Now, what is going to be the investigation of choice over here? CSF culture will be the gold standard if you say. Otherwise, investigation of choice will be CSF ELISA beta. So CSF ELISA or CSF immunoblot is going to be the investigation of choice in patients of fungal meningitis or cryptococcal meningitis beta. If they ask you definitely about the treatment, bolo treatment mein kya karoge? Very good. We know that it is a severe fungal infection, cryptococcal meningitis. So we have to give the drug of choice, and that is LAM beta. When I talk about LAM, we know it is liposomal amphotericin B. Along with that, we have to add another drug, and that is 5-flucytosine beta. Other agents that can be used are drugs like posaconazole, which can be tried beta, posaconazole. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. So that is what is very, very important to remember. Clear? In cases of fungal meningitis, CSF glucose will be normal or low? CSF glucose will be low. याद रखना CSF glucose is low in all types of meningitis except viral meningitis. All other use glucose definitely beta. That is important. Neutrophils are found in bacterial meningitis. Clear? That is important to be remembered. Question number 34, if they ask you, beta, here we have a patient who belongs to a rural area, beta, presents to you with a long-standing history of a painless swelling bache in the lower limb and the scrotum as well, beta. The microfilaria of this organism, the microfilaria of the organism, beta, causing this infection will be observed under microscopy, beta, in all of the following fluids of the body, bache, except कौन से fluid में ये नहीं मिलेंगे microfilaria. Very good. What is the diagnosis? We know that here you are able to see a classical lymphedema in the patient that is causing the painless swelling beta in the lower limbs of the patient. So it is a very classical case of a lymphatic filariasis. And if I talk about a case of lymphatic filariasis, we know it is mainly caused by which condition? Elephantiasis is a defect or a deformity which develops. Diagnosis is lymphatic filariasis, and it is caused by which organism? Wuchereria bancrofti beta. So therefore, the lymphatic filariasis is also known as the Bancroftian filariasis beta. So lymphatic filariasis is caused by Wuchereria bancrofti. Important is we know that this Wuchereria bancrofti can infect any part of the body beta except the salivary gland. It does not infect the salivary gland commonly, and therefore you will never find the microfilariae of Wuchereria bancrofti in the saliva beta. You can find it in blood, you can find it in urine, you can find it in even the ascitic fluid or even semen of the patient as well, because it infects the testis beta. Okay, but never in saliva. That is important to be remembered. Again, a PYQ of FMGE. Okay. Next important, if I talk about this one, is the Wuchereria bancrofti beta. So Wuchereria bancrofti and Brugia malai, इन दोनों को differentiate करने के लिए you have to look at the tail of the tip beta. ठीक है, so tip of the tail basically. तो यहाँ पे there will be no nuclei बचे in the tail of the tip in patients in the microfilaria of Wuchereria bancrofti. We know it causes Bancroftian or the lymphatic filariasis. The vector to transmit the Bancroftian filariasis is mainly the Culex mosquito beta. It is mainly the Culex quincke fasciatus, which is the vector. Okay. The test is known as the DEC provocative test beta. DEC provocative test will be done to collect the sample, and the sample will be mainly taken at night time or daytime. It is usually taken at the night time beta between 8:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. in the night beta. The sample collection time is going to be nocturnal. Next important, if you do a blood smear beta, the blood smear pe microfilaria will be there, and microfilaria will have no nuclei beta at the tail tip. That is important. Next, if I talk about Brugia malai, Brugia malai की अगर मैं बात करूँ, it is known to cause Brugian filariasis, and Brugia malai में definitely there will be two terminal nuclei beta which will be present in the tail tip. That is important to be remembered. Okay, so tail tip over here shows two terminal nuclei. What is the drug of choice for both the types of filariasis? The drug of choice for both the types of filariasis beta, it is going to be DEC, that is nothing else but diethyl carbamazine beta. That is going to be the drug of choice. Important, other drugs which can be given for triple therapy beta will be albendazole, which is given along with ivermectin. याद रखना, the triple therapy for lymphatic filariasis which is tried nowadays is DSC plus albendazole and ivermectin beta. That is important to be remembered. Hopefully clear to all of you now. Next important is question number 35. Here they say, beta, that a patient has undergone a cholecystectomy surgery. The patient has undergone a cholecystectomy surgery, beta. But after the procedure, basically, beta, after the procedure, due to few complications, bache, the patient is suffering, like the patient is basically suffering, beta, and that's the reason the patient is suffering, and that's the reason the patient files a case in the court. All of the following can be used. Sorry, all of the following, beta, can be used as a defense in a case of criminal negligence. It was a criminal negligence which could be life threatening for the patient, beta. So all of the following can be used as a criminal, like, sorry, a defense in criminal negligence, except option A says therapeutic misadventure. What is therapeutic misadventure? That is when the surgery is going on, beta, there would be some problems which are going to arise. Okay, so whenever you take a consent from the patient, beta, you will always take the consent from all for all these problems basically which will arise, beta. That is called as a therapeutic misadventure. Due to the surgery or due to the treatment, the patient may have some problems, beta, and for that you have already taken a consent, so that is not an issue, beta. Okay, so definitely that can be used as a defense in the patient. Okay, next is novus actor intervenence, beta. Novus actor intervenence is a new act intervening. Matlab, during the surgery, beta, maybe for example you have found a tumor, and that's the reason, beta, you had to excise that tumor now. Okay, or definitely the patient started bleeding all of a sudden, beta, so you had to definitely go for an intervention. So you have done a new act, beta, which was not actually planned during the surgery, but you have done a new act, and that was required for saving the patient's life, beta. So definitely that can also be used as a defense, beta. Okay, but next is unforeseeable complication. Unforeseeable complication matlab जिसके बारे में तुम्हें आइडिया ही नहीं था, वो अब तक कभी हुए ही नहीं थे, obviously ऐसे complication होंगे, तो that can also be a defense for you. Like these complications are not common, these are rarely happening, beta, in one or the other patient in lakhs of patients basically. No textbooks have mentioned, no journals have mentioned about them. तो ऐसे unforeseeable complications होंगे, तो again you are not responsible for that, definitely, beta. You will get an exemption from them. But contributory negligence cannot be an defense, beta, to be used in criminal negligence. Contributory negligence is only a defense to be used in cases of civil negligence, beta. Civil negligence का मतलब होता है a negligence which is not going to be life threatening in the patient, beta. ठीक है, जिसकी वजह से patient may not have any kind of life threatening complications बच्चे, तो ऐसा होता है सिविल नेग्लिजेंस. उसमें contributory negligence is used. Contributory negligence मतलब both doctor as well as the patient is responsible for that complication, बेटा. मतलब डॉक्टर ने जो टाइम से बताना चाहिए था वो बताया नहीं, पेशेंट ने जो करना चाहिए जो बताया गया था वो किया नहीं. सो डेफिनेटली बेटा दैट इज कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटरी नेग्लिजेंस. अगर तुमने सिजर छोड़ा है बेटा, या तुमने अगर फोर्सेप्स छोड़ा है abdomen के अंदर सर्जरी के दौरान, अब वो कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटरी नेग्लिजेंस से तो नहीं बोल सकते कि पेशेंट अचानक से जाग गया था इसलिए मैंने छोड़ दिया. ठीक है, इसके लिए कोई डिफेंस नहीं होता बेटा. दैट इज व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. क्लियर? तो क्रिमिनल नेग्लिजेंस में देयर इज नो रोल ऑफ एनी कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटरी नेग्लिजेंस बेटा. दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. होपफुली क्लियर. चलो, so that is what is important. When definitely beta it is going to be fact speaks for like please tell me definitely another one beta which cannot be used as a defense basically. It is known as res ipsa loquitur. What is res ipsa loquitur? Yes, the fact or the thing speak for itself, beta. That is basically called as res ipsa loquitur, beta. It is also not a defense basically to be used in cases of criminal negligence, beta. क्योंकि यहाँ पे तो दिख रहा है definitely कि तुमने कांड किया है. ठीक है, so that is what is important to be remembered, बच्चे. Clear? Now, if I talk about question number 36, beta, here it states at autopsy, beta, a body is found basically to have the below given finding, and there is a copious fine leathery froth, beta, from the mouth. There is a copious fine leathery froth from the mouth as well as nostrils, which increased on pressure, beta, over the chest. So, as you apply pressure over the chest, more froth comes out. What is the likely cause of death in this patient? Bolo. Now, here, what is this picture? So here you are able to see beta plants or weeds in the patient's hands. Okay, that is known as cadaveric spasm, beta. And I hope all of you are quite aware. This happens when a when definitely an alive patient was drowning, beta. When an alive patient will be drowning, definitely he will struggle to save his life, and therefore he will hold anything that comes in his hand, beta, and that will remain in his hand even after death, beta. Those muscles will remain in spasm even after death, basically, which were active during the death. That is known as cadaveric spasm, and I hope all of you are quite aware. This is the most specific sign for एंटीमॉर्टम ड्राउनिंग, एंटीमॉर्टम मतलब व्हेन द अलाइव पेशेंट हैज ड्राउंड, ठीक है, जिंदा पेशेंट अगर डूब गया है तो फॉर दैट एंटीमॉर्टम ड्राउनिंग द मोस्ट स्पेसिफिक साइन इज ऑलवेज अ कैडेवरिक स्पैज्म. अनदर स्पेसिफिक साइन इज गोइंग टू बी frothing beta. So if you are able to see a fine tenacious leathery froth from nostrils and mouth of the patient, that is again suggestive that the patient was breathing during drowning beta. Easily the water has gone up to the lungs of the patient. It has mixed with all the mucus and the surfactant over there, and therefore this froth has formed. Clear? तो जब पानी lungs तक जाएगा during breathing, then only this froth forms basically beta. That is more. That is not very specific, but yes, it is also one of the signs of anti-mortem drowning as well. दोनों symptoms दिए हुए थे. And any which way, just cadaveric spasm bhi diya hota, to bhi my direct answer would have been option B. That is nothing else but an antemortem drowning beta. That is important. Postmortem drowning matlab the patient has been killed first and then the dead body has been thrown inside the river vagara beta. So that is known as postmortem drowning. Postmortem drowning mein if the patient is dead, he is not going to struggle basically beta. So no cadaveric spasm, no frothing is usually seen. Strangulation is ligature strangulation beta. अगर ligature strangulation होता है basically तो you are able to surely see a ligature mark beta. Ligature mark is going to be seen during strangulation. Ligature mark of strangulation as well as ligature mark will also be seen in case of hanging beta. Even if it is a case of hanging, the ligature mark would have been seen. And second, obviously no cadaveric spasm is going to be seen. Important is ligature mark जो होता है definitely beta in strangulation, it is complete or incomplete. We know that definitely the ligature mark in strangulation is always complete. In hanging, the ligature mark is going to be incomplete. Here you tie a knot beta, so the ligature mark is always going to be incomplete. That is what is important to be remembered. Okay, in cases of hanging, definitely beta. Apart from this, there will be a very classical feature. Antemortem hanging agar hui hai to, there will be a laugh AC sympathetic. Laugh AC sympathetic matlab due to compression of the cervical sympathetic chain, you are able to see drooling of saliva beta and dilatation of pupil on the side of knot. So, ठीक है, तो dilatation of pupil on side of knot and drooling of saliva is known as laugh AC sympathetic, which is a feature of antemortem hanging which है. Clear about that is what is important to be remembered. Question number 37. पॉइजनिंग में फ्रॉथ दिखता है बेटा बट कैडेवरिक स्पैज्म यूजुअली इज नॉट अ फीचर. फ्रॉथिंग इसीलिए तो मैंने बोला इट इज नॉट अ वेरी स्पेसिफिक साइन. It is a specific sign but not very specific basically. The most specific is always a cadaveric spasm. Now important is if I talk about beta is question number 37. So here they say the patient is a known case of asthma beta presents to the emergency basically with complaints of what? Painful diminution of vision beta. Okay. And there is constriction of the visual field which was observed. She was started on treatment definitely and experiences beta worsening of wheezing. Matlab her respiratory distress or wheezing has worsened after taking this drug. The most likely drug beta which is implicated in this scenario is what is the provisional diagnosis? ये पहले बताओ. Patient has come to the emergency with complaints of painful diminution of vision along with constriction of visual field. Very good. It is a classical case of glaucoma. Which glaucoma presents to us with painful diminution of vision and in emergency? Very good. It is nothing else but an acute attack of angle closure glaucoma beta. It is an acute attack of angle closure glaucoma or acute congestive glaucoma. Normally in acute attack of angle closure glaucoma, हमें पता है बेटा that what is going to be the drug of choice acute attack में. The drug of choice definitely in acute attack of angle closure glaucoma is going to be pilocarpine beta. We know that. Why? Because pilocarpine, we know in angle closure glaucoma there is dilatation of pupil beta. So pilocarpine is a cholinergic drug which is known to cause meiosis or constriction of pupil which breaks the attack beta and gives pain relief. But yes, if they ask you only for angle closure glaucoma, then obviously the drug of choice is going to be mannitol beta. Not an acute attack, only for angle closure glaucoma के लिए अगर पूछा जाए definitely तो the drug of choice has to be nothing else but mannitol बच्चे. That is important to be remembered. Now if they ask you about open angle glaucoma beta, so please tell me open angle glaucoma में definitely beta. We know open angle glaucoma is not an emergency usually beta. Patient comes to us in OPD itself. What is the drug of choice for open angle glaucoma? We know that definitely prostaglandin analogs are considered definitely as a drug of choice for open angle glaucoma, something like latanoprost beta. These are considered as the drug of choice over here. That is important to be remembered beta. अब मुझे बताओ definitely What is going to be the drug which has been given, which has caused worsening of symptoms in this patient? Diagnosis. The drug has to be. Very good. We know answer has to be option C, beta, that is timolol. Timolol is nothing else but a beta blocker. And we know the patient is a known case of bronchial asthma beta. And we know that beta blockers should be avoided or contraindicated in patients of asthma. But if you give these drugs beta, it is known to cause bronchoconstriction. And as it will cause a bronchoconstriction, which a patient will have worsening of respiratory distress or wheezing of the patient beta. Clear about so the drug responsible is going to be timolol in this case. Which beta blocker can be used in patients of bronchial asthma? The selective ones, that is beta 1 blocker known as betaxolol. Betaxolol is that drug which is a beta 1 blocker and therefore can be used even in patients suffering from bronchial asthma beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Okay? We know that aplacronidine is a drug beta which is used for glaucoma and it is responsible for causing a side effect known as lid retraction. So please remember that apracolonidine is basically known to cause lid retraction, which is that drug beta which is contraindicated in smaller children due to the risk of sudden sleep apnea beta. Sleep apnea is mainly a side effect associated with which anti-glaucoma drug? That drug is basically known as brimonidine. So brimonidine is that drug beta which is known to cause a sudden sleep apnea in the patient. That is what is important to be remembered. Clear about? Apart from this, definitely beta, which is that drug basically beta, which is known to increase the inflammation and therefore contraindicated in patients of anterior uveitis. Which anti-glaucoma drugs will increase the inflammation? Hmm? The anti-glaucoma drugs which are known to increase the inflammation beta, it is going to be pilocarpine beta. Second is going to be drugs like prostaglandin analogs or latanoprost beta. They are known to increase the inflammation basically, and therefore they are contraindicated in any patient who's having inflammation like anterior uveitis. Clear about that is what is important to be remembered about the glaucoma drugs. मैंने बोला था दो miscellaneous topic जिसके drug बहुत important है. One is definitely glaucoma, second is definitely migraine, and तीसरा अगर याद रखना तो gout. ये तीन मिसलिनियस टॉपिक्स है फार्मा के जिसके ड्रग्स बहुत कॉमनली पूछे जाते हैं. प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट. ठीक है. वी नो बेटा दैट बेसिकली पाइलोकार्पिन इज नोन टू कॉज meiosis beta or constriction of pupil. Mannitol is basically an osmotic diuretic which is known to cause like osmotic diuresis and that will decrease IOP. Prostaglandin analogs are known to increase which flow? Trabecular or uveoscleral? We know that the prostaglandin analogs are known to increase the uveoscleral outflow beta. इसीलिए basically it is used in those conditions where there is a blockage of the trabecular meshwork beta. Whereas beta blockers are known to increase which outflow? So we know that beta blockers are basically known to increase the trabecular outflow beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. Next question number 38, beta. We are having a 30-year-old patient who has come to a physician, beta, with complaints like sore throat along with fever and odynophagia. Odynophagia is painful swallowing along with referred otalgia, beta. He has referred pain in the ear also. What is going to be the most likely nerve responsible for causing the referred otalgia in the patient? वी नो बेटा जब भी पेशेंट को कोई प्रॉब्लम होता है इन द टॉन्सिल्स और अराउंड द टॉन्सिल्स बेटा we know in the bed of tonsils we have the ninth cranial nerve or the glossopharyngeal nerve which is irritated, and due to that definitely beta the patient will have irritation of the glossopharyngeal nerve. And हमें पता है that one of the branch of glossopharyngeal nerve also supplies or innervates the middle ear called as Jacobson's nerve, and that is the reason why the patient will definitely develop a referred otalgia or a referred ear ache. That is what is important. The answer has to be nothing else but option D, that is glossopharyngeal nerve. Recent NEET PG and FMG question. अगर glossopharyngeal नहीं होगा तो आंसर में obviously Jacobson's nerve होगा, तो please be aware of that. यहाँ पे patient में the complaints were sore throat, fever and odynophagia. That was suggestive of tonsillitis, and due to that there was irritation of glossopharyngeal nerve. Second condition which can cause this problem beta is also quinsy or a peritonsillar abscess when there is collection of pus in the peritonsillar space. Third condition will be a surgery, and that is nothing else but tonsillectomy. During tonsillectomy, if you don't do a proper dissection, that can injure the glossopharyngeal nerve. And last condition is going to be Eagle syndrome, also known as Styalgia, that is when a long styloid process irritates the glossopharyngeal nerve in the bed of tonsils, basically. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. याद रखना. So if I talk about the auriculotemporal nerve, beta, हमें पता है auriculotemporal nerve is known to cause which syndrome? If the auriculotemporal nerve is injured, it is known to cause Praise syndrome beta. That is sweating and flushing over the parotid region after eating food beta. Greater auricular nerve is known to carry sensations from the angle of jaw. So when we have done a parotid gland surgery, after that, if the greater auricular nerve is injured, patient has loss of sensations over the angle of jaw. That I've told you already beta. That is important to be remembered. Okay? ईयर सिरिंजिंग के बारे में डेफिनेटली टू नर्व्स दैट लाइक सॉरी ईयर सिरिंजिंग के बारे में यू हैव टू रिमेंबर टू थिंग्स वी नो जब ईयर सिरिंजिंग करते हैं बेटा तो विच काइंड ऑफ वाटर शुड बी यूज्ड ऑलवेज warm water beta in case if you use a cold water बच्चे during ear syringing so definitely what we are going to develop the patient is going to develop vertigo beta ठीक है तो please remember if you are going to use cold water for ear syringing patient is tend to develop vertigo second the direction of ear syringing should always be antero-inferior or postero-superior it should always be postero-superior in case the direction of ear syringing is going to be antero-inferior then there will be irritation of the floor or which nerve the auricular branch of vagus nerve called as Arnold's nerve and the auricular branch of vagus or the Arnold's nerve if it is irritated patient has two problems first laryngeal nerve will also get irritated causing cough reflex in the patient and sudden parasympathetic activity is going to increase causing bradycardia and vasovagal syncope suddenly the bp of the patient falls the blood supply to the brain decreases and the patient falls down unconscious called as the vasovagal syncope. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. So yaad rakhna, this are the two things that you need to remember about ear syringing. Again, common ones in your exams. Question number 39. A patient of resistant epistaxis beta from the nasal cavities came to the casualty or the emergency beta with complaints of bleeding, which cannot be controlled beta even after ligation of the external carotid artery. What is the next step in management? If definitely beta ligation of external carotid artery also doesn't help, then the next step has to be इतने होशियार हो तुम लोग कि तुम पहले ईसीए को ब्लॉक करोगे और ईसीए को ब्लॉक करने के बाद फिर स्पिनोपैलेटिन आर्टरी पे ब्लॉक करने जाओगे ना तुम लोग तो हमें पता है दैट व्हेनेवर अ पेशेंट कम्स टू अस विद एपिस्टैक्सिस हमें पता है मोर कॉमन इज एंटीरियर और पोस्टीरियर एपिस्टैक्सिस more common is always an anterior epistaxis or anterior nosebleed. And anterior epistaxis happens from which plexus? It happens from the little's area beta. From which plexus? From the Kieselbach's plexus beta. And Kieselbach's plexus is made up of all the arteries except. Very good. So please remember the plexus is not made up of the posterior ethmoidal beta. Anterior ethmoidal, spinopalatine, greater palatine, and superior labial. These are the four arteries which are a part of Kieselbach's plexus. Which is the most common artery to bleed? The most common artery to bleed is going to be the spinopalatine artery beta. It is known as artery of epistaxis bache. Most common cause for an anterior epistaxis answer has to be it is nose picking beta. That is nasal trauma. Sorry, nail trauma. That is the reason children are more commonly involved. Now, treatment of epistaxis mein beta. The first step is always which method? The first method is always the Trotter's method beta. Trotter's method mein we have to pinch the nostrils of the patient beta for 5 to 7 minutes. Then if Trotter's method is going to fail, then the next step is eh? Trotter's method, if it fails, definitely, then we go for a chemical cauterization. The next step is always a chemical cauterization that we perform. If in case cauterization also fails, then the next step is going to be nasal packing beta. Anterior and posterior nasal packing can be done. If nasal packing also fails, now we will start ligating the arteries. The most common artery is spinopalatine. So first step is endoscopic spinopalatine artery ligation. The first artery to be ligated is spinopalatine. If that is ligated next, then if the bleeding doesn't stop, then we have to ligate the parent artery, and that is maxillary artery ligation has to be done. In case if maxillary artery ligation also doesn't help, then we have to block the parent artery, that is ECA, that is external carotid artery ligation. And if this also doesn't help, then ultimately you have to ligate the ICA, CCA. Shabash, ICA wale. So it is the ethmoidal artery ligation. CCA and ICA should never be ligated because they supply the brain. Patient dies. ठीक है? So याद रखना, यहाँ पे उन्होंने क्या कर दिया है, यहाँ पे उन्होंने बोल दिया that ECL ligation has been done. What is the next step? ECL ligation भी अगर try हो चुका है, the last step is only ligating the ICA branches, that is ethmoidal artery ligation has to be done. Clear है बात? So that is what is important to be remembered. Understood? तो मैंने इसीलिए बोला था पूरा फ्लो चार्ट याद रखना है, बीच बीच से नहीं याद रखना होता. ठीक है. Question number 40. All the below given biomedical waste which is there, all the below given biomedical waste products will be discarded beta in the yellow bag, except all the below given discarded in yellow bag except. हाँ ठीक है. So very good. So we know beta, if I talk about the biomedical waste management and segregation, we know it is basically done according to the Environment Protection Act beta, where we divide the biomedical or the hazardous waste into 4 color coded bags or categories beta. First is the yellow category. Yellow category may definitely beta, it is all the which kind of waste, all the human anatomical waste beta that will be included, that is any amputated limb, placenta वगैरह. ठीक है. Next important, it will be any type of animal waste beta. Animal waste, that is any kind of worms or maggots on all of that beta. ठीक है. It can be any kind of basically beta plasters of Paris, that is slabs, or any kind of cotton waste dressing materials बचे. ठीक है. Cotton waste dressing materials, beddings, gowns, clothings, all of that. Apart from that, it will be the face mask and cap which is infected as well beta. And next, it will be cytotoxic, expired or the discarded medicines also. Any kind of lab waste, that is microbiological or the biotechnological waste beta, it will also be discarded in the yellow category itself. That is important to be remembered. Which bag? Blood bag or urine bag? Blood bag is also discarded in the yellow category beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Unstained gloves or stained gloves? Stained gloves beta are also discarded in the yellow category itself. That is important to be remembered. Next, red category, which is there beta. Red category may definitely we will have all the recyclable waste, that is nothing else but all the types of plastics and all the types of rubbers beta. So plastics and rubbers definitely. So we know all the types of syringes beta which do not have any needles basically. Syringes with needles will go into white container beta. Next, any kind of IV sets, any catheters, any unstained gloves, urine bag beta, along with that any IV bottles as well. That is important. Next important is going to be the white translucent container. White translucent container mein beta, all the types of sharps will be discarded beta. Okay, any kind of needles, any kind of syringes with prefixed needles, any scalpels, blades, okay, all of that, sutures. Okay, anybody? After giving a vaccine to a patient, the nerve will discard basically beta the needle in which among the following categories? Very good. White. ठीक है ना. इंजेक्शन दिया, फिर कंटेमिनेट हुआ, फिर वो दिमाग नहीं चलाना होता. ठीक है. येलो मार्क करके आ गए थे 90% जनता. करो मत वो. शार्प्स कोई भी हो हमेशा व्हाइट में जाएगा, कंटेमिनेटेड भी हो तो भी, क्योंकि इसका भी ट्रीटमेंट होता है. क्लियर? दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. लास्ट इज गोइंग टू बी द blue category beta. Blue category waste which is there, it is again recyclable waste beta, all the types of glass and metals, any kind of ampules, vials, vacuotiners, lap slides, broken glass, nails, metallic body implants, scissors, surgical instruments, all of that. Clear है बात? That is important to remember. तो हमें पता है that yellow category में बेटा सब कुछ जाएगा, like stained gloves, chemical waste, amputated limb, but urine bag will not go into yellow bag. Urine bag is discarded in the red bag beta. That is important to be remembered. Only blood bag is discarded in the yellow bag bache. That is what is important to be remembered. Yellow bag is discarded by which method? Yellow black is discarded by the method of incineration. That is nothing else but dry heat under high temperature basically beta. Temperature of incineration will be 1200 degree Celsius beta. The temperature of incineration will be around 1200 degrees Celsius. That is important to be remembered. Next, all the red category waste will go for either recycling or road making beta. So recycling or road making mein all the red category waste goes. All the white category waste goes into, it is shredded beta first and then it gets buried down into pits basically. All the blue category waste also goes for glass and metal, hai na? So it also goes for recycling beta. That is what is important to be remembered. पेस मेकर बेटा अगर वो मेटालिक हो तो वो ब्लू कैटेगरी में जाता है बेसिकली, ठीक है. इफ इट इज अ मेटालिक पेस मेकर, नाउ इट इज आल्सो टाइटेनियम टेफ्लॉन के ही आता है, तो दोज आर आल्सो मेटल्स इटसेल्फ, तो इट विल गो इनटू द ब्लू कैटेगरी बेटा. दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. क्वेश्चन नंबर 41, इफ आई टॉक अबाउट टाइम इंटरवल बिटवीन, ओके 50 क्वेश्चंस कर लो फिर ले लेना ब्रेक. टाइम इंटरवल बिटवीन ऑनसेट ऑफ डिसीज एंड द डिसीज डिटेक्शन बेटा इन नॉन इन्फेक्शियस डिसीजेस विल बी कॉल्ड एज, नॉन इन्फेक्शियस या नॉन कम्युनिकेबल डिसीजेस के बारे में पूछा है. नॉन इन्फेक्शियस डिसीजेस मतलब डायबिटीज, मेलाइटस, हाइपरटेंशन, ऑल ऑफ दीज डिसीजेस. तो इट इज गोइंग टू बी कॉल्ड एज ऑप्शन सी, दैट इज लेटेंट पीरियड बेटा. जब तक साइंस और सिम्टम्स नहीं आते इन अ नॉन कम्युनिकेबल डिसीज, इट इज कॉल्ड एज लेटेंट पीरियड बेटा. इंपॉर्टेंट, अगर मैं ये कम्युनिकेबल डिसीज या इन्फेक्शन के बारे में पूछता, देन द आंसर वुड हैव बीन incubation period beta. So incubation period is nothing else but the time period from entry of organism into the patient's body till the appearance of first sign and symptoms beta, till the appearance of first sign and symptom. Next important, generation time is the time gap between the entry of organism in the body till maximum infectivity beta. Okay, from entry of organism in the body till maximum infectivity. This time is basically known as generation time bache. Serial interval is what? Serial interval is the time between the gap between the development of primary case and secondary case. हमें पता है the first case of disease is known as primary case, whereas any other case developing from primary will be called as secondary case beta. So the time gap between primary and secondary case will be called as serial interval. What is median incubation period? The incubation period in 50% of the individuals बेटा, मतलब 50% individuals का जो average होता है, that is what is definitely बेटा called as the median incubation period. That is important. No issues with this anybody? Chalo. So these are the important points that you need to remember about the definitions. Question number 42, if I talk about beta, is the program which is represented beta by the below given logo is managed by which among the following ministries? It is very clear, beta, just by looking at the picture itself. It is a logo for what? It is a classical logo. ICDS activities beta, that is nothing else but integrated child development services beta. So integrated child development services का logo है ये. And we know ICDS activities are always managed by option D, Ministry of Women and Child Development beta. Yes, it has integration with Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, but it is mainly managed by Women and Child Development Ministry. Ayush is for the alternative forms of medicine beta. Human Resource and Development का नया नाम is Ministry of Education, that manages basically the midday meal scheme beta. Okay, along with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Okay, the midday meal scheme now under the Poshan Abhiyan, that is co-managed basically by the Ministry of HRD or Ministry of Education now. Clear? That is what is important to be remembered. Clear? ICDS activities की अगर मैं बात करूँ, what is the heart of ICDS activities? PYQ again. Yes, the heart of ICDS activity will be a Anganwadi center beta. Anganwadi is considered as the heart of ICDS activity. If I talk about how much population norm for an Anganwadi in plains will be for, one Anganwadi will be for 400 to 800 population beta, that is important. Whereas in hilly areas or tribal areas, it will be for one Anganwadi per 300 to 800 population beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Second important, if they ask you, what is the functional unit of ICDS activity? What is the functional unit of an ICDS activity beta? The functional unit of an ICDS activity will be a community development block. Community development block is basically the functional unit of an ICDS activity. Who is in charge of community development block? Very good. It is the child development project officer known as CDPO beta, who is basically the in charge of the community development block. One community development block has how many villages under it? It has 100 villages basically under it, beta. And how much population? 1 lakh population. So 100 villages or 1 lakh population comes under one community development block. Yes, the management is done by child development project officer and इसके अंडर चार मुख्य सेविकाज होती है और 100 आंगनवाड़ी सेविकाज होती है बेटा. That is what is important to be remembered. Hopefully that's clear to all of you. That is important. And ICDS activities are responsible for the immunization or the vaccination program, beta. Second, they are also responsible for giving non-formal preschool education to the smaller children, beta. Third, they are also responsible for health education. Fourth, they are also responsible for contraceptive counseling and contraceptive distribution, bache. Fifth, they are also responsible basically, beta, sorry, for definitely free food distribution, bache, to the smaller children or to the pregnant and the lactating females, beta. That is what is important to be kept in mind. That is important. If this is the logo, beta, batao logo kiska hai? Previously, it was called as National Health Mission, the umbrella program of India, beta, for health, basically, NHM, the National Health Mission. Now, the new name is basically known as Pradhan Mantri Samagra Swasthya Mission, beta. Now, the new name definitely of this program is nothing else but the Pradhan Mantri Samagra Swasthya Mission. That is what is important to be remembered. No issues with this, anybody? Chalo. So that is what is important, beta, to be kept in mind. Done? Next important is Niti Aayog, beta now. Question number 43, very easy, straightforward question. Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog का full form बताओ पहले तो. यही गड़बड़ा जाते हैं. एक बार क्वेश्चन आया था नीति आयोग का फुल फॉर्म बताओ. हाँ, नेशनल सबको पता है, आगे बताओ. हाँ, नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट. चलो आगे. हैं? वेरी गुड. फॉर Niti Aayog is National Institute for Transforming India, beta. It is the think tank of India. This, like usually, the top bureaucrats and some ministers definitely, beta, headed by the Prime Minister, definitely will be a part of the Niti Aayog. Okay? So Niti Aayog is going to be the ones who is going to form the policy. जितनी भी policies बनती है तुम्हारी, those are usually formed on the recommendations based, like given by the Niti Aayog, beta. Niti Aayog has replaced which among the प्री एग्जिस्टिंग बोर्ड इन इंडिया, बेटा? कौन सा बोर्ड पहले था जिसको रिप्लेस करके नीति आयोग बोला गया? Yes, it is option D, that is National Planning Commission. They were the ones to give advice or recommendations on policy making, beta. Now it is a Niti Aayog. The same organization, name is different. Okay, National Planning Commission का. National Board of Examination ये अपना काम कर रहे बहुत है, ठीक है. National National Commission for Minorities is not there. Medical Council of India खत्म हो चुका है. It is National Medical Commission now. ठीक है, जिसको अपने ही काम नहीं हो रहे. ठीक है, चलो. क्वेश्चन नंबर 44, इफ आई टॉक अबाउट, बेटा, इट इज अ प्रेग्नेंट फीमेल डेफिनेटली कम्स टू यू फॉर अ रूटीन एंटीनेटल चेकअप, बेटा, एंड शी आस्क्स which among the following vaccine, बेटा, she can take. बोलो कौन सी वैक्सीन ले सकती है वो? The only vaccine that a pregnant female over here can take will be option D, that is rabies vaccine. Rabies vaccine, because it is a killed or an inactivated vaccine, whereas all these three are going to be the live attenuated vaccines. And I hope all of you are quite aware that pregnancy is going to be an immunocompromised state. And agar pregnancy immunocompromised state hai, obviously all the live vaccines will be absolutely contraindicated. That too when the patient has to travel. ठीक है, तो प्लीज रिमेंबर इम्यूनोकॉम्प्रोमाइज्ड स्टेटस अगर होगा पेशेंट का, वेदर इट इज प्रेगनेंसी और इट इज हाई डोसेस ऑफ कॉर्टिकोस्टेरॉइड्स और इट इज एचआईवी पॉजिटिव पेशेंट, बेटा, देन इन ऑल दोस कंडीशन एक बात हमेशा याद रखनी है, दैट विच वैक्सीन्स आर कॉन्ट्राइंडिकेटेड. ऑल द live vaccines are always contraindicated, beta. ठीक है, so that is what is important to be remembered. याद रखना है बात. All of them are live attenuated except rabies, beta. So rabies can be taken. Please tell me definitely in pregnancy the only vaccine which can be given will be during pregnancy. Only live vaccine which can be given during pregnancy will be yellow fever. That too if she wants to travel to a yellow fever endemic zone. Yellow fever is absolutely contraindicated during. हम्म लैक्टेशन के दौरान डेफिनेटली रिमेंबर बेटा, absolutely contraindicated vaccine is yellow fever. Reason, yellow fever is excreted out in breast milk beta, so it is never given during lactation or breastfeeding. That is important to be remembered. Next important beta, which vaccine is going to be contraindicated beta if the patient is having active or a progressive neurological disease. So if the patient is having a progressive neurological disease, which vaccine is contraindicated? It is pertussis beta. So the vaccine that is contraindicated during a active or a progressive neurological disease, answer is pertussis. ठीक है? So which vaccine is contraindicated in cases of sorry, in case of malnutrition? In case of malnutrition, beta, which vaccine is contraindicated? Malnourished children में. No vaccine is contraindicated beta in patient who is malnourished. That is what is important to remember. Hopefully clear to all of you now. So do remember that. Chalo. Question number 45. If I talk about a vegan patient beta who comes to your PHC or a primary health care center with complaints of fatigue along with leg pain beta and muscle cramps. She also gives history of fractures beta earlier in this patient. Her CBC reveals definitely beta the hemoglobin levels of 10 grams per deciliter. What is the likely vitamin deficiency? Now, definitely beta यहाँ पे the patient is vegan. तो मतलब she does not eat any kind of meat or any kind of dairy products beta or any products derived from animals. Now important is if I talk about vegan patients beta, we know there are two vitamins which has no plant source at all beta. Those two vitamins will be vitamin B12 and vitamin D. Both of them do not have any plant source. But अगर single best answer mark करना होता है तो answer is always vitamin B12 or cobalamin. Reason, vitamin D you can obtain at least some amount beta from the sunlight basically. So most deficient vitamin in vegan patients, answer has to be option A, that is vitamin B12. One reason. Second, majority symptoms which are given beta, that is fatigue is a symptom of anemia which happens due to B12 deficiency, that is megaloblastic anemia beta. Leg pain cramps happen due to that. Hemoglobin level of 10 grams per deciliter is again due to B12 deficiency itself. And history of fractures है, अभी के symptoms definitely vitamin D की वजह से नहीं है. Fractures D की वजह से हो सकते हैं. But again, अगर कॉमन चूज करना है तो B12 ही आंसर होगा. अगेन बेस्ड ऑन मेजॉरिटी सिम्टम्स या प्रेजेंट सिम्टम्स चूज करना है, अगेन विटामिन B12 होगा. फ्रैक्चर्स अभी तो नहीं हो रहे हैं ना, अभी का जो प्रॉब्लम है इज बेसिकली ड्यू टू विटामिन B12 डेफिशिएंसी. क्लियर है बात? दैट इज व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू बी रिमेंबर्ड. एंड एनी विच वेज अगर नहीं भी होता, अगर फ्रैक्चर्स भी दिया होता, स्टिल आई वुड हैव गॉन फॉर B12 क्योंकि मोर कॉमन इज बेसिकली B12 बेटा. तो जब दोनों सिम्टम्स हो तो हमेशा मोर कॉमन या जिसके ज्यादा सिम्टम्स है उसको मार्क करना होता है. क्लियर? Now we know vitamin B3 deficiency is not seen in vegan patients beta, that causes pellagram. Vitamin C deficiency is known to cause scurvy beta. तो हमें पता है that vitamin C deficiency is known to cause scurvy basically. Infantile scurvy is seen in which patients? Infantile scurvy is seen in which patients? हमें पता है स्कर्वी के केसेस में विटामिन सी डेफिशिएंसी होती है, इसकी वजह से कोलेजन कम बनता है. ड्यू टू दैट पेशेंट हैज weak collagen or weak structures causing bleeding around the calf raise or bleeding around the tibia beta, subperiosteal hemorrhages known as pseudo paralysis of calf. Due to the excessive pain the child is not able to walk beta, that is classically known as pseudo paralysis of calf. Second important, the child is going to have very classical feature and that is nothing else but gum bleeding beta. हमें पता है that gum bleeding is a very classical feature in scurvy patients beta. And third important feature you are able to see which is nothing else but these small bleeding spots which are seen on the skin, and these small bleeding spots is known as petechiae beta, which will be seen over here. Hopefully clear. These are the features that will be seen in a patient who is suffering from scurvy, that is vitamin C deficiency beta. No issues with this. Richest source of vitamin C is amla, that is Indian gooseberry beta. Richest source of vitamin A is halibut fish liver oil beta. Richest source of vitamin D is again halibut fish liver oil beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Clear है बात? याद रखना. Richest source of iron will be richest source of iron. Very good. Dried pumpkin seeds beta. Dried pumpkin seeds will be the richest source of iron. That is what is important to be remembered. कोई दिक्कत यहाँ तक? So that is what is important. Question number 46, if they ask you, the proposal to control the malaria in towns beta. Okay. The proposal to control the malaria in towns and cities has been named as the urban malaria scheme. According to the scheme, beta, which among the following statement is incorrect? Option A says, beta, utilization of anti-larval measures. Will it be done? Yes, it will be done, but obviously to decrease the breeding of mosquitoes. Second, slide positivity rate. It should be more than 10%. Is it true? No, beta. So please remember, slide positive rate should be as low as like it should be as low as possible, beta. Okay, it should not be more than 10%. It should be as low as possible. That is what is important. It is done in cities, beta, with minimum 50,000 population. Yes, beta, it is done in cities with 50,000 population. Introduction of active surveillance has been done. Yes, जैसे पहले rural areas में बेटा the multi-purpose worker male used to go for a fortnightly visit in patients of suspected malaria and collect the blood samples for peripheral blood smear beta. Same manner mein active surveillance is also done in urban malaria scheme beta. Usually it is applied in the slums or in poor socio-economic status areas beta. So answer has to be option B. That is an incorrect statement about urban malaria scheme बच्चे. That is important. अगर malaria की मैं बात करता हूँ, please tell me which is going to be the best indicator of malaria. Better than infant parasite rate. Annual parasitic incidence beta. Please remember the best indicator for malaria nowadays is going to be an annual parasitic incidence. That has to be remembered. That is important. Second important, if they ask you which is the best indicator for recent transmission of malaria, the best indicator for recent transmission of malaria, now the answer is going to be infant parasite rate beta. The infant parasite rate is the best indicator for recent transmission of malaria beta. ठीक है? Which is the best indicator for operational efficiency of malaria? Whether the malaria elimination program it is going no, good or not beta, whether it is performing well or not. So what is the best indicator for that? Annual blood examination rate beta. So annual blood examination rate is the best indicator bache to check the sorry, to check definitely the operational efficiency of malaria control program or malaria elimination program bache. That is what is important to be remembered. Causative agent of malaria is going to be, it is causative agent of malaria is going to be Plasmodium species. ठीक है, most common type of Plasmodium causing malaria is known as Plasmodium falciparum. Which shape of gametocyte? Sarkari. Banana shaped gametocytes will be seen. Which Plasmodium species is known for its recurrence? Relapses are common with Plasmodium vivax and Plasmodium ovale. So vivax and ovale are very common beta for the relapses basically to happen. इसीलिए drug of choice for relapse prevention is given in vivax and ovale malaria known as Primaquine. The drug of choice for relapse prevention will be Primaquine beta. That is important to be remembered. What is the vector for malaria? It is female Anopheles mosquito. The female Anopheles mosquito is known to transmit the malaria infection beta. That is what is important to be remembered. What is the basically the stain used for malaria, peripheral blood smears of malaria? It is the जसवंत सिंह भट्टाचार्य स्टेन बेटा. तो हमें पता है जब पेरिफेरल ब्लड स्मीयर करना होता है मलेरिया के लिए तो इट इज द जसवंत सिंह भट्टाचार्य स्टेन डेफिनेटली दैट वी यूज. कौन से स्मीयर्स करते हो बेटा? दो स्मीयर करते हो ना. वन इज थिक एंड थिन बेटा. तो थिक स्मीयर किसके लिए होता है? थिक स्मीयर इज जस्ट टू आइडेंटिफाई the presence or absence of the Plasmodium species beta. Thin smear is basically done for species identification beta. कौन सी species of Plasmodium is causing the infection? उसके लिए we have the thin smear. Next हमें पता है rapid test भी होती है बच्चे मलेरिया में. And what is that rapid test based upon? Previous question of your exam. Rapid antigen test basically which is done in patients of malaria, that is based on the histidine rich protein type 2 of Plasmodium falciparum. Repeated question. तो याद रखना histidine rich protein type 2 of Plasmodium falciparum is the one that we use for the rapid antigen test that we do in patients of malaria beta. Hopefully that's clear to all of you now. Chalo. Next question number 47 if I talk about is which artery is being palpated in the given image? Sarkari question. The artery that is palpated between the medial malleolus and the tendo-achilles is always option B, that is posterior tibial artery beta. That has to be kept in mind. Popliteal artery will be palpated behind the knee in the popliteal fossa beta. ठीक है, inner thigh area में we will palpate for the femoral artery बच्चे. At the level of wrist we are going to palpate for the radial artery beta. At the level of cubital fossa, we palpate for the brachial artery beta. Clear? So that is what is important to be remembered. Dorsalis pedis artery is palpated against which bone? In the foot, the dorsalis pedis artery is palpated against the navicular bone or between the first and second metatarsal beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Question number 48, if I talk about the muscle highlighted beta in the below given image will not perform which among the following, okay, will not perform which among the following movement beta at the shoulder joint. First of all, what is going to be the muscle that is highlighted? The muscle that is highlighted over here, which gives the round shape to the elbow beta, is nothing else but your deltoid muscle, bache. And I hope all of you are quite aware that deltoid muscle is the chief abductor muscle of the shoulder joint beta. It is the chief abductor muscle of the shoulder joint. तो abduction तो पक्का ही करेगी. We know deltoid muscle is the chief abductor, but it helps in almost all the function of the shoulder joint except अगर वो abductor है तो उल्टा एक्शन कर पाएगी करवाएगी क्या? वो नहीं, दैट इज अडक्शन नहीं करेगी वो. ठीक है, तो प्लीज रिमेंबर बेटा that as deltoid is the chief abductor muscle beta, it is never responsible for adduction. Adduction is not caused by deltoid, it is caused by pectoralis group of muscles beta. That is important to be remembered. Clear है बात? Whereas flexion and medial rotation, yes, it helps in that. Extension and lateral rotation, yes, it also helps in that. If I talk about beta, the deltoid muscle, it is responsible for how many degrees of abduction? It is responsible for abduction between 50 to 90 degree. So 15 to 90 degree, which is the initiator of abduction? Supraspinatus beta. So 0 to 15 degree abduction or initiation of abduction is done by supraspinatus muscle. 15 to 90 degree midway abduction is done by deltoid muscle. And above 90 degree, that is overhead abduction, is basically done by two muscle. One is going to be the trapezius muscle and second is the serratus anterior muscle. So trapezius and serratus anterior muscles are going to help us in overhead abduction beta. That is what is important to be remembered. Clear hai? कोई दिक्कत? Now important, deltoid muscle is innervated by which nerve? तो हमें पता है that deltoid muscle is always innervated by the axillary nerve. Axillary nerve will go around which neck of the humerus? Surgical neck. तो हमें पता है axillary nerve palsy happens whenever there is a fracture of the surgical neck of humerus बेटा. तो surgical neck of humerus के fracture में patient has axillary nerve palsy. Important is axillary nerve का root value will be C5 and C6 beta. And whenever axillary nerve will be paralyzed, the patient will have palsy of the deltoid muscle causing difficulty in abduction mainly beta. Second, patient will have loss of sensation from this upper lateral part of the shoulder called as regimental badge sign beta. So regimental badge sign is a classical feature found in patients who are suffering from axillary nerve palsy beta. Understood? Next, question number 49, if they ask you. Here we have a female beta who was a known case of which disorder? Bipolar disorder bache, and she was currently taking the treatment with a mood stabilizer agent beta. But her doctor advised basically her to shift to another drug bache. Which among the following will be the least likely side effect of the drug the patient has been taking? अब इतना तो clear है, the patient is a known case of bipolar disorder. What is the drug of choice for bipolar disorder? We know the drug of choice for bipolar disorder is a mood stabilizer known as lithium. And हमें पता है that lithium is teratogenic. And that's the reason the doctor might have asked the female beta to shift to another drug. Maybe she wants to conceive or she wants to get pregnant beta. इसीलिए now, if I talk about lithium beta, हमें पता है that basically lithium is a narrow therapeutic index drug जहाँ पे toxicity chances are very very high beta. इसीलिए whenever we use definitely lithium for maintenance beta, how much should be the plasma level of lithium that we should maintain? So it should be 0.5 to 0.8, maximum 1 beta during the maintenance basically. Whereas if I talk about acute attack of मतलब acute mania में, तो acute mania में whenever you use lithium beta to control the symptoms, यहाँ पे higher dose is required beta, and here it will be 0.8 basically to 1.2. Maximum it can be 1.5 beta. Clear है बात? So that is what is important to be remembered. याद रखना है बात. No issues with this. If they ask you about lithium, the side effects of lithium are remembered by the mnemonic lithium. So LITHIU and M. When I talk about Li beta, that is nothing else but increase in the level of leukocyte. That means patient will have leukocytosis. T stands for tremors beta. S stands for the patient is going to have hypothyroidism beta. Next, IU stands for increased urine output beta, that is polyuria. And M stands for basically mothers may lithium will be given or avoided. So mothers may, we know definitely lithium should be avoided beta because the fetus will be at the risk of developing a condition known as Epstein's anomaly beta. Epstein's anomaly may basically there is a congenital right tricuspid atresia beta causing a box shaped heart. Now please tell me which among the following is the least likely complication. हमें पता है that definitely oliguria नहीं होता है, increased urine output होता है बेटा. So this is the least likely side effect. Tremors are rather the most common side effect of lithium beta. Hypothyroidism and diarrhea can also be seen. Clear? Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea बहुत common side effect है. तो majority drugs के साथ होंगे ही होंगे. ठीक है? Question number 50, if I talk about beta, is a couple is basically trying beta to have a child for how many years? For the past 2 years basically. After unsuccessful trials, definitely beta, they went for a further analysis. Husband's examination was done, that is husband's semen examination, the husband's examination was done, which reveals tall stature, enlarged breast, along with scanty hair beta, scanty pubic and axillary hair. His semen analysis reveals beta there is oligospermia or a decreased sperm count. Ultrasound reveals there are atrophied testes in the patient beta. Okay, streak testis. What is the likely karyotype finding in this patient? What is the diagnosis? We know it is a classical case of a Klinefelter syndrome beta. हमें पता है in patients of Klinefelter syndrome definitely बच्चे the patient's genotype will be a 47XXY beta. Option D has to be the answer. Reason here, as there is an additional X chromosome or a female chromosome beta, that is the reason the patient will have more amount of estrogen causing enlarged breast development, or there will be decreased testis development causing atrophy beta. Okay, so and as all the androgens will be converted into estrogen, there will be less androgens, so therefore there will be decreased pubic and axillary hairs in the patient as well beta. That is important. And as testis itself are atrophied, therefore the semen analysis is going to reveal oligospermia beta. And we know Turner's may there is short stature, but Klinefelter's may there will always be a Turners may there is a short stature, and Klinefelter's may always a tall stature will be found beta. That is what is important to be remembered. No issues with this. 45XO is a diagnosis of Turner syndrome. Patient will have short stature, webbed neck, low posterior hairline. Along with that, flat shield-shaped chest, along with widely spaced nipples, streak gonads, that is streak ovaries, causing primary amenorrhea in the female beta. At birth, the female may also have a cystic hygroma beta. Patient can have an inward curvature of fourth finger called as clinodactyly. So clinodactyly is an important feature in Turner syndrome beta. Do remember that. Clear about? So this is a classical case of Turner syndrome. 46XY is a normal male beta. 48 double X and XY is a feature of ovotestis. So ovotestis जो होता है basically in ovotestis patient which is a true hermaphrodite जिसमें मेल और फीमेल दोनों होगा तो that two hermaphrodite that is definitely 48XX and XY. Clear है बात? जाओ जल्दी. This is lunch break. Take a 45 minutes का break. At 2 I'll start.